Chapter 632. Li Siqing finally untied the rest of the rope. Looking at his red hands, he loosened his muscles. Tang Minjing looked at his comfortable look, took a sip of red wine, and smiled. Li Siqing saw a red lipstick mark on the wine glass. Tang Minjing's reaction was much calmer than he had imagined. "Are you not afraid that I will run now?" "You can't run." Tang Minjing was sure. "There's so many people outside. Unless you have the ability to jump down from here, there's no way you can escape." Tang Minjing glanced at him and chuckled. "However, if you want to go down, I could take you down. It is just a matter of a word. As long as you tell me who your accomplice is, or sleep with me once, I will let you go. It has been 4 years. Li Siqing, it is not easy to go back. Don't you want to? You want to sleep with me that much?" Li Siqing looked at her with a faint smile, looking down at her with disdain. "Of course." Tang Minjing chuckled. "Even in my dreams. Unfortunately, I don't have feelings for you." Being straightforward, this sentence was a great insult to any woman, especially for Tang Minjing, who everyone wanted to have sex with. Tang Minjing's smile was also cold. "If you can't, then you can't. Did the beating 4 years ago hurt you down there too?" Li Siqing ignored her and looked around the room. The decoration was beautiful, and it looked like a hotel. However, Tang Minjing had lived here for a while, so it looked like a home. Seeing that he did not speak, Tang Minjing gritted her teeth and said, "There is another way. Have you forgotten? You want me to tell you who my accomplice is? So, you admit that you have an accomplice?" Li Siqing asked, "Did I deny it?" Tang Minjing smiled, stood up, and handed the wine glass to him. "Want one?" Li Siqing took it and shook it gently in his hand. "I advise you to be sensible. The Bo family is already angry. They wanted to kill you directly, but I pleaded for you. If it weren't for me, you would have been killed on the road today." Tang Minjing looked at him with a pair of big eyes. Her stiff face twisted into a smile, which looked extremely ugly. Li Siqing did not speak. Looking at the big vent in front of him, his eyes were unspeakably deep. "You don't believe me?" Tang Minjing raised her eyebrows. "Do you really want to try being killed?" "Yes." Li Siqing's gaze fell on her. "But you don't want me to die. Do you still like me?" "Ha. Why didn't I find you so humorous before?" Tang Minjing said, leaning toward him tentatively. Li Siqing did not refuse and let her approach. Tang Minjing was surprised, but she quickly leaned over and put a hand on his shoulder. Li Siqing looked down at her and smiled. Tang Minjing felt her heart flutter and her heart beat faster. He actually smiled at her? Tang Minjing was slightly absent-minded, but she soon came back to herself. "No." Tang Minjing subconsciously wanted to step back, but it was too late. Li Siqing quickly chopped at the back of her neck. Chapter 633. Tang Minjing's body fell straight back, and the cup in her hand fell on the carpet. The red liquid quickly fainted on the carpet and seeped down. Li Siqing looked around coldly and opened the window. "It's very windy tonight. Very windy." As soon as the window was opened, the wind poured in and blew the curtains high. Li Siqing looked down. It was very high. This was the top floor, and it was estimated that there were at least 40 floors. It was too unrealistic to jump down from here. Li Siqing pondered for a moment, looked around, and finally hid in the bathroom. He unbuttoned his pants and turned the button out. There was a small secret compartment inside. Inside the secret compartment, there was a small sealed pocket. Inside the pocket, there was a sapphire cross-stud earring, and it was astonishingly placed inside. "Jigsaw, there's a change of plan. Please support." Half an hour later, Jigsaw went to the Dongfang International Building with a tall bodyguard in black. The bodyguard in black was wearing a black leather suit. He was tall and thin, wearing a pair of sunglasses, looking powerful and domineering. The bodyguards at the door all knew Jigsaw. After greeting them one by one, Jigsaw walked to the suite where Tang Minjing was. She reached out and knocked on the door, saying, "Miss, it's me." After a long while, the door was opened. Jigsaw went in with the tall bodyguard. After about 10 minutes, Jigsaw came out with a smile. The bodyguard outside saw Jingsaw's expression and came over curiously. All of a sudden, he heard a clanking sound coming from inside. The sound came from the bathroom. Coupled with Jing Sa's expression, the bodyguards were even more curious and asked, "What's wrong? A man and a woman making this kind of sound in the bathroom. What can they do?" Jing Sa glanced at the bodyguard with an expression of, "You are so ignorant. Guard well. If you need anything, go in. Don't go in and disturb them." The bodyguards also had the expression of an experienced driver, and they laughed at the same time. Jing Sa led the bodyguards she brought into the elevator again and went down soon. The soundproofing effect here was very good. They waited until dawn the next day. The captain of the bodyguard team received a call from above. After connecting, he heard a scolding from the other side. "Where is Tang Qing? Where the hell did that woman go? He's been in the room with Mr. Li. Put her on the phone. Whatever she's doing, give me an explanation right now." In one night, the 5 or 6 ports that she was in charge of were all seized by the police. Do you know how much she lost? It doesn't matter if we lose money or not. Those bastard cops even followed the clues to the headquarters. Let's see how she's going to solve this problem for me. The bodyguard's heart skipped a beat. He knew how serious this was. He did not care about his privacy and opened the door with a spare key card. After entering, he found that Tang Minjing was not in the room at all. How could that be? Could it be that he didn't come back to sleep for the entire night? The bodyguard was shocked and quickly went to check the bathroom door. With a twist, the door opened. Inside, Tang Minjing was tied up with a man wearing only a pair of underwear. Their mouths were covered with several layers of tape. Seeing him come in, they all struggled for help. Chapter 634. Jing Sa led the bodyguards down the elevator and walked out of the building calmly under the gaze of the lobby. When she got back to the car, she breathed a sigh of relief. There was a driver in the car who was Jing Sa's colleague. Li Xiqing's expression did not change much. After getting in the car, he took off his sunglasses indifferently. His voice was cold and slow, powerful and dignified. "Drive." The man did not have much feelings for Li Xiqing. At this moment, he was very upset to hear such an order. However, seeing that his boss Liang Jing did not have any objection, he quickly started the car and slowly drove away from the Dongfang International Building. It was now 23:05 in the evening, Beijing time. "Jing Sa, we have been exposed. They think I am the leader, but you have been exposed tonight. Tang Minjing can't go back. Now let's split up. You go back immediately to arrange the deployment to catch them." Jing Sa heard the words and said with a dignified expression, "Now, have you finished the thing you said you would do before?" "Not yet, just a little bit more. It will take about 2 days. 2 days, as long as he was given 2 more days, he could get the evidence of the Bo family's crime. He had been preparing for 3 years, calculating for 3 years, and enduring humiliation for 3 years, just for the scene 2 days later. However, at this critical moment, he was exposed. Li Xiqing had long thought that he would be exposed. TL's movement was too big. According to his calculation, he thought that they would be out of breath for at least 40 days. Too fast, too fast. The Bo family was more difficult to deal with than he thought. "What should we do? We have prepared for so long and lurked for so long." Li Xiqing's face was also very ugly. "We can't wait. We have already alerted the enemy. If we wait, all the deployments over the years will be in vain. Now that they have just begun to doubt, we will take them down in one fell swoop. Go and contact your colleagues and let them search the warehouse of the Bo family. There will be a batch of violins or guitars hidden in them. What about you?" Li Xiqing heard Jing Sa's question, and his deep and restrained eyes flashed coldness. He said slowly, "I will go and meet them." Chengyu was feeding the baby milk. The baby was only more than a month old. When she was born, her wrinkled skin had grown round. Her skin was white and tender, and her facial features were very beautiful, especially her eyes, which were almost identical to Chengyu's. Little Pan, she fed and played with the baby, unable to hide the smile on her face. Suddenly, the door to the room opened. It was rare that Rong Rue didn't wear his home clothes. He walked out of the room with a cigarette in his mouth. He didn't light it. He frowned slightly and looked a little upset, holding the car key in his hand. She took a look and asked, "Are you going out?" "Okay." Rong Rue came over and touched his daughter's little face. His irritated face softened. When little Rong Pan Pan was full, she spat out the food in her mouth and turned her head away. Her tongue stuck out from the side of her mouth, and she curled up her little fists and waved them around. Seeing his daughter like this, Rong Rue smiled happily. He hugged his daughter and kissed her on the cheek. She looks so much like you. She put down the clothes and glanced at him disdainfully. Fortunately, I look like you. If I look like you, I won't look good. Chapter 635. Not pretty. Hearing this, Rong Rue held the child in one hand and pressed her head with the other. He opened his mouth and took a bite of her mouth, asking fiercely, "Is it pretty? Not pretty." Rong Rue took another bite. "Is it pretty? Not pretty." Rong Rue pressed her down and kissed her fiercely, like a wolf biting, but he was reluctant to be too aggressive, kissing her gently from shallow to deep. Being entangled, Chung Yu soon became aroused and slowly responded. Boo-hoo. The little guy was left out and started crying, not to be outdone. He waved his little fists and stomped his feet. She pushed Rong Rue away and picked up the little girl. Pan Pan, don't cry. Rong Rue laughed, touched the little girl's little face, and said, "You know how to ruin Dad's good things at such a young age. What will you do when you grow up?" "Go away." She pushed him. "Didn't you say you were going out? Get out. Get out." Rong Rue stood up, but then leaned down and kissed her on the lips again. "Wait for me to come back and get out with you. Don't go to bed so early. Get out." Rong Rue smiled, took the car key, and went out the door. However, when he got out of the house, the smile on his face did not last long, and his irritation gathered again. The cigarette had been put on the table, so he had to take out another cigarette, lit it, and walk toward his car. He drove to the riverside of Kangchengdong. This was the road to Hunan that led out of the city. Based on his understanding of them, they would definitely go out of the city, stop in Hunan for a day or two, and then set off to find new location. After waiting for a long time, a dark blue sports car came from a distance. He could tell from the car that it was Bo Xiao. Rong Rue looked down at the time, and it was already 3:49 in the morning. He took out the cigarette from his mouth, put his hand on the steering wheel, and suddenly went across, blocking the front of the sports car. The dark blue sports car suddenly braked to a stop. Rong Rue looked sideways and saw Rong Anna's obviously frightened face in the passenger seat. Useless cousin? Rong Anna saw Rong Rue unfastened her seatbelt and was about to get out, but was held down. Bo Xiao looked at her coldly and said, "Are you crazy? Are you going to walk right into the trap? He is my cousin, Xiao. He won't harm me." Rong Anna was convinced. "We have been in touch over the years. In order to help me control Li Xiqing, he approached his assistant and now married his assistant. It is because of his help that we can capture Li Xiqing for so many years. He is one of us." Bo Xiao was skeptical, but Rong Anna insisted. Rong Rue was in the middle again. After thinking for a moment, Bo Xiao nodded, unfastened his seatbelt, and got out of the car together. Rong Rue also got out of the car, threw the cigarette but on the ground, stamped it out, walked over, and handed over the bank card he had prepared. Rong Anna saw the card and was stunned. Bo Xiao was also stunned and looked at him. "Take it. There are still many ways to spend money in the future. I bought these cards from the black market. They're the ones that were not bound to mobile phone messages after they were stolen, and they have not been canceled for a long time. Don't use your own cards in the future. It's too dangerous. There are 2 million in this card. No one will find out if you use these cards." Useless cousin. Rong Anna was moved and looked at Rong Rue. Chapter 636. Rong Anna hugged Rong Rue back and sobbed. "Help me take care of my parents. You also remember to go home early. Your parents miss you very much." "Okay." Rong Rue responded, patted her on the back, and quickly released her. He took out a wallet from his pocket and took out a stack of cash. "There is not much cash. Take it and take care." Rong Anna took it without hesitation. She couldn't stop her tears and nodded. "Take care. I hope to see you in the future, Anna." Rong Rue's eyes were a little red. "You will always be my sister." Then he turned to look at Bo Xiao. "Take care of her." "I will." Bo Xiao nodded, reached out, and took Rong Anna's hand. "Let's go." If we delay any longer, they will catch up. I didn't expect Li Siqing to hide so deeply. Cousin, if you can, help me get revenge. Rong Anna sobbed. I trusted him so much, but I didn't expect this guy to fool us. This guy is too cunning. Okay, I will try. Rong Rue looked at her, a little reluctant, but still urged, let's go, or we won't be able to leave. Rong Anna and Bo Xiao nodded, and Rong Rue quickly moved the car away and let them drive away. Watching the sports car leave, Rong Rue's heart finally fell. After taking out a cigarette case and slowly lighting one, he started the car, turned around, and drove in the direction of home. When he returned home, Chengyu was already asleep, and the baby was lying in the cradle, sleeping soundly. Rong Rue leaned down, kissed her face, and slowly moved to her lips. She turned her head away in disgust and groaned. You smoke so much. Go brush your teeth. Then she looked up at the small alarm clock on the bed. It was already 5 o'clock. She was surprised. You just came back. Where did you go? Rong Rue straightened up, regardless of her disgust, sat on the bed, and hugged her. I want to do something big. What big thing? Why you smoke so much? She pushed him, but he did not move. Are you in a bad mood? Rong Rue hugged her tighter, turned over, and pressed her down. He whispered, I feel better when I see you. Then he kissed her lips. She hit him. The smell is too strong. The baby is still drinking milk. Don't hurt the baby. Go take a bath. Yes, the baby's mother. He straightened up, but still leaned forward. Another kiss. She was angry and kicked him. Go away. However, he slipped away so fast that she did not manage to kick him at all. She heard his proud laughter go away, and the door was closed again. The fake anger on her face slowly disappeared and was replaced by a happy smile. They had been married for more. Rue, Cheng Rue said. Rue back. Rue, how miserable. Why do I have to take care of 2 children by myself? Oh, dash. Chapter 637. At 2 a.m., a large amount of heroin was found in the main warehouse of the Kingstown branch of the Bow Musical Instrument Company. The president of the branch has been arrested and investigated by the police. After investigation, it was found that there is a bigger leader behind the president of the Bow Musical Instrument Company. He has fled overnight. He has escaped from Kingstown and is still being pursued. The picture on the TV changed. It was a picture of a large group of reporters surrounding an old man who looked like he was in his 50s or 60s. After investigation, it was found that the Bow family had faced a bankruptcy crisis as early as 7 years ago, with a loss of nearly 2 billion yuan. It was the biggest crisis in the history of the Bow family. Then it cooperated with a transoceanic international company, and then came back to life. The police have been involved in the investigation. According to insiders, the absconder is the only son of the head of the Bow Musical Instrument Company. Bo did not respond to the sudden change of the situation. He is currently under the control of the police for investigation. The old man looked at the TV with the remote control, shook his head, and sighed. It's terrible. This Bo family should have a good relationship with the Rong family in the capital. How did they suddenly get involved in drugs? Ouch. Li Jianyue, Li Jianxian, and Li Mosen were having breakfast. When she heard what her great-grandfather said, Li Jianyue came over with her small bowl and asked in a sweet voice, Great-grandfather, what are drugs? Drugs are harmful things. You must not touch them. If you touch them, you will be finished for the rest of your life. Old Master Li said earnestly and shook his head. Ursu must remember that you can't touch drugs. Oh. Li Jianyue held a small bowl and scooped herself a mouthful of porridge. But as she ate, she dripped it on her beautiful clothes. Li Jianyue looked down and pouted. She looked at the old man and said, It's dirty. What should I do? The old man smiled lovingly and took a few tissues to wipe it off for her. He said, Come on, great-grandfather will feed you. No, my mother said that I have grown up. In the future, I have to eat by myself and wipe my ass by myself. Otherwise, I won't grow up. Although she said so, she held a small bowl of porridge and ate in a mess. Seeing the porridge fall on her clothes and on the ground, Li Jianyue jumped back, but she did not expect that with such a jump, the small bowl directly fell to the ground with a bang. When Li Jianyue saw it, she pouted even more. Her big eyes became wet, and she almost cried. She looked at the old man pitifully and said, "It dropped." The old man laughed, took the small bowl, and carried her to the sofa. After wiping the porridge off her clothes with a tissue, he shouted, "Xiaolu, clean up the inside first." Lu Sa was hanging clothes outside. Hearing the old man's voice, she answered. Su Qianxi had just woken up and cleaned up. Walking out of the room, she looked at her watch. It was not yet 7:30. As soon as she came out, she saw a small bowl on the ground and her daughter's pitiful face. Su Qianxi felt a bit of a headache. Pretending to be unhappy, she shouted, "Li Ersu, did you cause trouble again?" Ersu pursed her lips, and tears welled up in her big eyes. She sniffled and whispered, "I didn't do it on purpose. It wanted to run away on its own. I couldn't catch it, so it dropped." "You." Su Qianxi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She cleaned up the food and then went to the kitchen to get her another bowl. "Come here, Mom will feed you." "Okay." Seeing that her mother did not scold her, Li Jianyue's little face was full of smiles. A pair of short legs dangled off the sofa and ran to the dining room. "Wan Lily, Ersu, come home with Uncle. Uncle will take you to see the goldfish." Li Jianyue, "Uncle, my father wants you to read this pinyin." Chapter 638. Li Jianxian and Li Mosen looked at each other as they ate. Both of them held their own spoons, and they ate one spoon after another smoothly. However, from the moment Su Qianxi sat down, she saw them looking at each other, eating and watching. After a few minutes, Su Qianxi couldn't help but ask, "What are you doing?" Competing in concentration. Li Jianxian did not look back, eating porridge with a spoon, chewing and looking at Li Mosen. Li Mosen's action was similar, nodding and continuing to eat. Puff. Su Qianxi looked at the two little guys and laughed speechlessly. Finally, the two people finished eating porridge, and they had been looking at each other. "Are you done?" Su Qianxi curiously came over. Li Mosen shook his head. "Unless one of us turns his head first, we can decide the winner." Li Jianxian nodded and stared at Li Mosen. Su Qianxi reached out and covered the eyes of Li Jianxian next to her, turning his head to the side. Li Jianxian was stunned, but immediately shouted, "Mom, you are a burden. I lost." Li Mosen laughed on the opposite side, his blue eyes curved, very beautiful, and then climbed down from the stool and ran to the backyard. Li Jianxian's dark pupils showed dissatisfaction, and his white and tender little face was red with anger. He also climbed down and ran in, shouting, "Don't run, this game doesn't count." Li Jianrui watched the two brothers run away, and a pair of eyes looked at Su Qianxi, blinked, and said, "Mom, I am full." Su Qianxi knew what she wanted to do at a glance, and took a tissue to wipe her mouth. "Go!" Li Jianrui immediately climbed down from the stool, wearing small sandals, and ran to the place where the two boys just disappeared. After Su Qianxi finished eating, it was already 8 o'clock. The tutor hired for the children just came over. The tutor was a single mother and only had a high school education. There was a child at home who was in middle school and was now in his 30s, but she was very patient and caring. So Su Qianxi chose her to be the children's tutor. A few days later, the children liked this tutor very much, so Su Qianxi decided to stay. After saying hello at the door, Su Qianxi drove to the company. After a busy morning, the bell rang. She straightened her back and stood up. Today, she had an appointment with Lu Yihan in a high-end shopping mall, which was currently the one with the best performance in the city. Su Qianxi planned to inspect the surroundings after dinner. It was a Cantonese restaurant on the first floor of the shopping mall. After walking out of the restaurant, they arrived at the south square of the shopping mall. It was huge and lively. When she entered the room, Lu Yihan had not arrived yet. 10 minutes before their appointment, Su Qianxi was sitting in the private room, scrolling through Weibo on her phone. Suddenly, the waiter outside knocked on the door and said, "Mr. Su, someone is looking for you outside." "Who?" "Let him in." "Well, he hopes that you can go to the square." "This way, please." Su Qianxi raised an eyebrow in surprise. What was he playing at this time? Turning off the phone, Su Qianxi picked up her bag and walked outside. The waiter led her to the south square. The square was empty. Outside, Su Qianxi did not see Lu Yihan at all. Turning around, the waiter had gone back into the restaurant. Suddenly, a little boy ran over, looking about 7 or 8 years old, holding a flower in his hand. It was a calla lily. The flower of calla lily is eternal. Su Qianxi took it, smiled, and asked, "Who asked you to give it to me?" Chapter 639. Which, sir? However, before the little boy answered, he smiled and ran away. Su Qianxi looked down at the calla lily in her hand, smiled, and shouted, "Mr. Lu, stop playing. I know it's you." However, there was a brisk footstep in front of her, and this time it was a girl. The flower language of the forget-me-not is eternal love. Su Qianxi took it, and the girl quickly ran away. After a while, another girl ran over and handed her a purple tulip. The purple tulip is Mr. S' endless love for you. After one left, there was always another person coming over and handing her a beautiful fresh flower. The white lotus represents Mr. S' sincerity and the purest faith. The flower language of honeysuckle is "I want to give you all my best." The bellflower represents Mr. S' most loyal and sincere love for you. Lavender represents gratitude and protection. 99 lilies are willing to be with you for a long time, 100 years. This was the day that Su Qianxi had heard the most flower language. The more flowers she received, the more guilty she felt. Su Qianxi looked at the large bouquet of various flowers in her hand and felt more guilty for Lu Yihan. Today, she asked Lu Yihan out to tell him that she regretted it. But why did Lu Yihan do this? How could she say it next? There were more and more people around. Everyone thought that Su Qianxi would be happy, but after seeing her expression, they all looked at each other. Someone picked up his phone and took a video. Suddenly, there was an exclamation. Opposite where Su Qianxi was standing, there were beautiful bicycles riding in. The body of the bicycles was transparent, and the riders were carrying baskets full of fiery roses into the square. Each basket was full, fresh, and beautiful, and a light fragrance quickly drifted. The bicycles stopped next to Su Qianxi, and one by one, the bicycles quickly stopped around the edge of the square. 5, 10, 15. The number of bicycles was constantly increasing, and baskets of fiery roses were carried to the center of the square. Each one was bright red, fresh and vibrant. The people around exclaimed and were shocked. "Awesome, Brotherword. There's so many roses. Are there 9,999 roses? Are you stupid? How is that possible? It must be more than that." There were at least 999 flowers in each basket. Damn, it wasn't over yet? How many are there? Quick, take a video and post it on Weibo. He's too rich. Su Qianxi was shocked to see more and more riders coming in. Those full flower baskets were placed in the center of the square. Bicycles went out one by one, and another came in. After a while, there were dozens of flower baskets. Someone at the back was counting and shouting, 88, 89, 90, 97, 98, 99, 100. After entering the last number, everyone heaved a sigh of relief and shouted, "It's finally over. My goodness, this is the first time I've seen so many flowers in my life." "Qianqian." Lu Yihan's voice came from behind her. Hearing the voice, Su Qianxi's back stiffened. Chapter 640. Yihan. Su Qianxi felt uncomfortable, turned around, and looked at him. Just when Su Qianxi turned around, Lu Yihan saw the large bouquet of lilies and various flowers in her arms, and his eyes darkened. Then, he looked up at the dense sea of red flowers. The dense roses were divided into two sides, and there was a long path in the middle. Suddenly, the girls around screamed crazily and shouted, "What is that?" "Ah, the latest international robot. Who is this? How could they be so generous?" "Awesome." A robot came straight over with a wire tied to its waist. There was a red roller on the wire. When the robot walked, the roller was pulled, and a layer of red was laid on the ground. Su Qianxi saw it, slightly dazed, and looked at Lu Yihan. Lu Yihan did not speak, also looking at the little robot. The little robot walked slowly, and it took 10 minutes to reach Su Qianxi. The red carpet on the roller was just finished and fell to the ground, forming a long red carpet path. The little robot came up, bowed to Su Qianxi, and said in a mechanical voice, "Dear Mrs. Li, everything is ready. Please accept my apology." When the robot's voice fell, a small compartment popped open on its stomach. A small claw held a red velvet box and handed it out. Su Qianxi held the flowers and took the red velvet box with one hand. Opening it, there was a pendant inside, beautiful platinum inlaid with shining rubies. This was a swan. Su Qianxi saw it. Her pupils suddenly shrank and subconsciously reached out to hold the swan necklace on her neck, and her heart suddenly sped up. The little robot also took out a big note from the inside compartment, handed it to Su Qianxi, and said, "Dear Mrs. Li, please accept my apology." On the piece of paper, the bold and vigorous handwriting was impressively eye-catching. There was not much content, just 4 words, "I am back." Tears gathered at some point, and the bean-sized water drops fell on the paper, dipping a corner of the pen on it. The crowd exclaimed without warning, shouting, "God, who is that? So familiar. I must have seen it somewhere before. Isn't this that guy?" Hearing the voices around her, she suddenly raised her head and looked at the end of the red carpet. It was noon, the time when the sun was at its brightest in the 24 hours of the day. The blazing and scorching light shrouded a tall and slender figure, walking step by step against the light. Su Qianxi's eyes were blurred, and the strong light made her tear up even more. He was wearing a suit that fitted him perfectly. He was tall and slender, but he stood upright. Every step he took seemed to bring with it a dazzling light. He didn't have much of an expression on his face, but his facial features were exquisite and sharp. His jawline was tight, and his deep and cold eyes carried an indescribable gentleness as he slowly walked forward. He was holding a large bouquet of roses in his hand. They were bright like fire and glistening red, making his unusually fair skin look even more tender and youthful. Su Qianxi looked at him, tears rolling down her cheeks uncontrollably. Almost subconsciously, she walked in his direction. Chapter 641. Surrounded by loud cheers. Many people recognized who this person was. This person was probably known by everyone in the entire Kingstown. However, after 4 years, everyone thought he was dead. Now, he actually appeared here in this way. "Oh my God, a zombie!" Su Qianxi stared at him and approached step by step. The Li Xiqing in front of her was getting more and more real, closer and closer, and more familiar. Li Xiqing was holding a large bouquet of flowers, a pair of cold and sharp eyes as dark as the night sky, so dazzling that it made her feel like she was in a dream. Su Qianxi suddenly did not dare to go over. Holding the flowers sent by those people, she opened her mouth and asked in a trembling voice, "Is it you?" Her voice was not loud, with a strong sense of testing, choking and trembling. She was careful, for fear that if her voice was too loud, he would disappear like before. Many times he had appeared in front of her, but as long as she slightly moved or breathed, he would disappear. No matter how she looked for him, he never appeared by her side. She was scared, so scared. What if this was not real? What if this was just an illusion, just her imagination? What to do? Hearing this, Li Xiqing's eyes curved. Holding the flowers in one hand, he opened his arms to her with the other. His voice was cold and slow, with an irresistible gentleness. He said, "I'm back. It was him. It was him. It was really him." Su Qianxi's hands trembled, and the large bouquet of lilies and other flowers in her hands all fell to the ground. She took a step and ran forward. Her long hair flew up because of running. Her petite and light figure, under a lot of exclamations, hit the tall figure. Su Qianxi reached out and hugged him fiercely. Li Xiqing's body was as steady as a mountain, hugging her hard as arms. Su Qianxi only felt her waist was tight. An indescribable, wonderful feeling made her sob. The real touch, the real temperature, the real. It's really you, it's really you. Su Qianxi buried her face in his chest and couldn't help crying. "Li Xiqing, you bastard." Putting her hands on his waist, She hit his back hard and cursed. Bastard, beast, bastard, ungrateful. Li Siqing held her waist and felt her reel in his arms, feeling indescribably satisfied. At the same time, there was also a long-lost happiness that wrapped around him. Kissing her hair, he whispered, "It's me, it's all me." Su Qianxi wiped all her tears and snot on his new clothes, crying unscrupulously, like a child who had been wronged and suddenly saw an adult she could rely on. This kind of happiness was self-evident. Holding him firmly, she refused to let go. She did not dare to let go. Holding him tighter and tighter, there were cheers all around. It was unknown who started it, but the voices of men and women mingled together and sang loudly, "You're finally here." Fortunately, I didn't give up. Happiness doesn't come easily, so I cherish it even more. Mr. Li, yes. Li Siqing, yes. Honey. Chapter 642. I waited for you for 4 years. Su Qianxi hugged him, and her crying gradually stopped. I always believed that you were not dead. He held her in his arms and did not speak, only holding her tighter and tighter. For years ago, I gave birth to your child. Did you know that? It's a boy and a girl. And your company, I became the president of your company. Did you know that? Pursing his lips, Li Siqing held her, his eyes burning. After a long time, he slowly said, I know. He knew everything. But the more he knew, the more guilty he felt. She was just a woman, and she had to bear so much alone. He was the biggest culprit. Su Qianxi suddenly smiled and had calmed down a lot. Her voice was low, with a nasal voice and choked. She said, Look, I can live very well without you. Li Siqing held her up with one hand and whispered in her ear, I'm back. You'll be better. Su Qianxi put her arms around his neck, and the people around them echoed, shouting, Kiss, kiss, kiss. Su Qianxi blushed. She had wanted to kiss him, but she suddenly shrank back because of their shouting. She patted him. Let me down. Li Siqing chuckled, let go of her, and whispered, Go back first. Look at you, you are wet. You are wet. I'm not talking about that. What are you thinking about? Su Qianxi did not think about that. At this moment, hearing his words, her face immediately became hot. She immediately pushed him away and said, Pervert. Li Siqing reached out and pulled her back, whispering in her ear. His voice was soft and distant. With a hint of teasing, he whispered, I'm wet too. If you don't believe me, feel it. Come on, feel inside. As he spoke, he grabbed her hand and put it into his clothes. Su Qianxi quickly pulled her hand away, pushed him away, and then turned away. He chased after her with the roses and reached out to hold her hand. He pulled her and stuffed the rose in his hand into her arms. Holding it in her arms, Su Qianxi looked at the big bundle of red roses and the dense sea of red flowers on the square and said, It's too wasteful. Even if you have money, you can't spend it like this. There were a total of 100 flower baskets in the square, and each basket contained 999 roses. Plus the 99 she was holding, there were 99,999 roses in total. This was too extravagant. Li Siqing smiled, pinched her nose, and teased. After being a CEO for a few years, you know it's not easy for your husband to make money. Su Qianxi was about to say something, but seeing his obviously thinner face, she felt sorry and reached out to touch it. He had become much thinner and whiter. He was really locked up, so that's why he became so white, right? It was so white that the veins on the back of his hand could be clearly seen. Upon closer inspection, it was somewhat frightening. Su Qianxi almost couldn't hold back her tears again. Resisting the urge to cry, she whispered, Let's go home first. Li Siqing's eyes softened. Holding her little hand, he took it down and placed it in his palm, saying softly, Okay. At this moment, Su Qianxi suddenly remembered that there was another person behind her. But looking back, in the crowd, Lu Yihan was nowhere to be seen. Chapter 643. Where is Lu Yihan? Su Qianxi felt even more upset and looked at Li Siqing. Did you give me these flowers? Or did you think it was Lu Yihan? Li Siqing raised an eyebrow and narrowed his eyes dangerously. Looking at her, he tightened his grip on her little hand. Su Qianxi pursed her lips and said worriedly, "Today, I asked Lu Yihan out for dinner. Now we haven't eaten yet. Let's go eat." Li Xiqing did not wait for her to finish her words and put his arm around her waist, walking toward them all. Su Qianxi was hugged, holding a large bouquet of flowers in her hand. The onlookers around all cast envious looks at Su Qianxi. She had not felt this way for a long time. Su Qianxi's face was slightly red, and she slightly turned her face in the direction of Li Xiqing, covering her face. Seeing this, Li Xiqing's lips curved imperceptibly and asked, "What do you want to eat?" "I just booked a private room and ordered food. It's here." Su Qianxi pointed to the Cantonese restaurant they had just come out of. Li Xiqing put his arm around her and went inside. Back in the private room, Su Qianxi did not see Lu Yihan and was a bit disappointed. However, when she walked in, she found a note on the table. It was folded into a small square. When she opened it, she saw Lu Yihan's familiar handwriting. "You win, Qianqian, happiness forever." Seeing these words, Su Qianxi felt even more sad, and her eyes were burning. Li Xiqing reached out and took the note. Seeing the strong handwriting on it, he raised his eyebrows and then directly crumpled it into a ball, stuffed it into his pocket, and asked, "Eat." Su Qianxi gave him a stare, asked the waiter to help serve the dishes, and walked to the bathroom in the private room. Just when she was washing her hands, she saw Li Xiqing also coming in. Su Qianxi saw him and did not care. After wiping her hands with a tissue, she was about to go out, but he pulled her in. He closed the door and pushed her, pinning her against the door. Su Qianxi's heart suddenly raced, and she looked at him in shock. There was a strange and familiar throbbing in her heart. The feeling that she hadn't felt for a long time made her a bit dazed. Before she came back to herself, he kissed her and swallowed all the words she wanted to say. With one hand around her waist and the other on her head, Li Xiqing kissed her very hard, with rough longing. He forced her lips and teeth apart, penetrated deeply, and hooked her tongue, almost going crazy. Too long, it had been too long. For years was a torment for anyone. Li Xiqing circled her with his arms, his movements wild and frenzied. Almost instinctively, his big hand moved down, lifted her dress, and slowly reached inside. Startled, she reached out and gently pushed him away. However, Li Xiqing had been celibate for 4 years, and they had been apart for 4 years. At this moment, he had already lost his mind. Leaning forward, Su Qianxi could clearly feel the fiery longing, so fierce, so scary. Li Xiqing left her lips and moved down to her chin, her neck, and her collarbone. She had not been touched like this for a long time, and her body was almost numb. Subconsciously, she put her arms around his neck and looked up, breathing heavily. Dash. Chapter 644. He picked her up and pressed her against the sink. He unzipped her back, untied her belt, and moved down step by step. Su Qianxi gasped and grabbed his big hand that was about to invade her. Her voice was intermittent. "No, no." He broke her hand away and held it. Fingers interlocked, he sighed. His voice was low and cold, and he was panting like a beast at night, which made her subconsciously clamp her legs. Aroused, he said, "I can't wait. I miss you so much. I miss you so much. Me too. I miss you so much." However, before Su Qianxi could say anything, she clearly felt his big hand moving up. His slightly rough hand trembled, and she couldn't help letting out a shy moan. However, reason still won over impulse. Su Qianxi lifted her foot and kicked him away. "No, there are more important things to do." Li Xiqing's face was bitter. He grabbed her hand and touched it that had already swollen and boiled. He looked at her with some grievance. "Honey, it hurts." Su Qianxi saw him like this and suddenly chuckled. "You really look like your son like this." Li Xiqing's expression became serious. He looked at her fiercely and gritted his teeth. "It's my son who looks like me." "All right, stop it." Su Qianxi pushed him away and said with a warning look, "When we go home after dinner, the kids haven't seen you yet. You really have the heart to do that." He looked at her. In his deep eyes, there was a bright color, but his eyes were slightly curved with unspeakable grievance. He reached out and held her in his arms, his body close to hers. He gently rubbed against her and asked again, "You really have the heart to do that?" She had not been with him for a long time. This kind of touch was a bit strange for Su Qianxi. It was a bit scary, and there was some indescribable joy. But more than that, it was shyness. Su Qianxi had always been shy. She blushed and looked away. She pried his hand away and said, "You said it yourself. I will find you in the future. When you come back, I can punish you however I want." Reminded by her, Li Xiqing suddenly remembered what he had said in the past. Closing his eyes in distress, Li Xiqing did not want to let go of her and whispered, "How about we change the punishment to another time? What do you think?" She glared at him, pushed him away, and said, "I'm starving." That was her trump card against Li Xiqing. As expected, he relented and straightened her clothes. Sighing helplessly, he said, "Okay, let's eat." She straightened her dress and walked out the door. The waiter had almost finished serving the food. Seeing Su Qianxi's red and swollen lips, he looked down and walked away after the dishes were served. After a few minutes, Li Xiqing came out. He looked calm and naturally sat next to Su Qianxi. Su Qianxi's dishes were very simple. Teriyaki ribs, eggplant with garlic sauce, 3 cups of goose, stir-fried macaroni, and 2 cups of green olive soup. Li Xiqing saw the dishes and reluctantly accepted them. Fortunately, they were all Su Qianxi's favorites. When he thought that she originally wanted to eat with Lu Yihan, he felt unspeakably disgusted. Su Qianxi did not notice his strangeness, put the rice in front of him, and gave him a piece of ribs. "Eat more. You are too thin now, and your figure is not as good as before. It feels uncomfortable." Chapter 645. Subconsciously touching his body, Li Xiqing soon noticed the naughty smile in Su Qianxi's eyes. Pretending to be sad, he sighed, then grabbed her hand and said, "Touch inside. It's very comfortable. Do you want to try?" Su Qianxi reached out her hand and was grabbed by him into the suit. She really felt inside through the shirt. His muscles were firm and elastic. But why did he look so much thinner? Su Qianxi couldn't help but pinch it. Li Xiqing's eyes became darker and darker, with the desire of a beast faintly looking at her. Meeting such a gaze, Su Qianxi immediately knew what he wanted to do. She wanted to take her hand back, but he held it tightly. He leaned over and whispered, "Is it very comfortable?" Knock, knock. The door of the private room was knocked, and Su Qianxi felt like she was struck by lightning. She immediately pulled her hand back and pushed him, blushing. Li Xiqing pursed his lips and slightly raised the corner of his mouth. It was very light, but it could be seen that he was in a very good mood. The waiter quickly brought the dishes up. Seeing Su Qianxi's look, he did not look at her. After the dishes were served, he opened the door and left. "Eat." Su Qianxi kicked him under the table, blushing and scolding. "You are not being honest at all." Li Xiqing did not care. Looking indifferent, he chuckled and said in a charming voice, "I haven't seen you for so long. It's not normal to be honest." Su Qianxi saw his teasing eyes and decided to ignore him, lowering her head to eat. However, he never looked away, gazing at her with burning eyes. Su Qianxi felt her cheeks were getting hotter and hotter, and her head was getting lower and lower. "Are you eating from the bowl, or eating?" Li Xiqing chuckled and reached out to hold her head up. "Eat. Don't look at me." Su Qianxi glared at him and pushed his head away. "If you look at me again, I won't be able to eat anymore." Being stared at to the point that one's heart was like a monkey's gallop and one's blood surged. No one was able to resist this kind of gaze. With regret in his eyes, Li Xiqing sighed, "No touching, no kissing, no touching, and no looking. This punishment is too heavy." She couldn't help smiling and kicked him. "Hurry up and eat." "Okay." Li Xiqing finally calmed down, picked up his chopsticks, and ate elegantly. His every movement was naturally noble and elegant, and it was as if there was no difference from before. However, his eating speed was much faster, and his appetite was also much larger. The last thing the waiter served was a bowl of wheat buns, half a dozen. Li Xiqing ate 5 of them, and the food was soon gone. Fortunately, Su Qianxi never ate much and was full after a few bites. However, after eating out so many times, it was the first time she had seen a table so clean. Su Qianxi secretly clicked her tongue and felt even more distressed. Seeing this extremely familiar face and short black hair, she subconsciously looked at his ear. No piercings. She remembered that he was wearing a sapphire cross earring. Was it her imagination? Taking a sip of tea, she looked at him, wanting to say something. Seeing her like that, he chuckled. What do you want to say? It was you at the amusement park last time, wasn't it? The person who saved her and her daughter must be him. Chapter 646. Li Xiqing's eyes softened, and he nodded. It's me. Your hair, wig. Where are the earrings? He took out a sapphire earring from his pocket and gently twisted it into an ear clip. Su Qianxi understood, but after confirming that it was him, she felt a little sad. She felt wronged and choked. Do you know how long I looked for you last time? I was also regarded as a psycho. They all thought you were dead. I called your name in the amusement park for so long. Why didn't you come out? He stood up from the chair, hugged her from behind, and whispered, I won't do it again, I swear. You said the same last time. I didn't swear last time. Li Xiqing chuckled and lifted her up. I promise, I won't do it again. Really? Of course. When he said this, his eyes were deeper. Looking at her profile, there was an indescribable tenderness in his eyes. Su Qianxi clearly noticed it, and her heart skipped a beat. Glancing at him, she got up from the chair, took her bag, and walked out. Li Xiqing looked at her back and laughed. He picked her up and quickly followed her, paid the bill, and left the restaurant. As soon as she got in the car, Su Qianxi received a call from Luo Zhan. Hello, sister-in-law. Yeah. Did you see anything special after 12 o'clock at noon? I heard that someone put 99,999 roses in your mall. It was beautiful, but that person... Luo Zhan was tentative, afraid that he would touch Su Qianxi's heart with a wrong word. It's Li Xiqing. Luo Zhan was petrified and dumbfounded. He's back. Su Qianxi smiled. This time it's true. He's really back. Luo Zhan couldn't believe it. After a long while, he recovered and said, Sister-in-law, so the videos and pictures on Weibo are all true? Yes. Oh my God. Luo Zhan was like a madman. His body rolled over, and then he fell off the chair. He screamed, but then his voice suddenly became louder. He shouted excitedly, What about the second brother? Where is the second brother? Let him answer the phone. Su Qianxi clearly knew Luo Zhan's mood. She smiled gently, and her eyes couldn't help but feel a little hot. She handed the phone to Li Xiqing and said, Luo Zhan. Li Xiqing took it and did not make a sound. He curled his lips and waited for the other side to speak first. Luo Zhan was silent for a while, then shouted, Second brother? Yes. Oh my God. Luo Zhan's voice was full of joy. It's really you, really you? Say something. It's me. These two simple words made Luo Zhan's mood, which had been suppressed for many years, suddenly burst into a shocking ecstasy. His eyes were burning, and Luo Zhan only felt an indescribable emotion welling up. When he spoke again, his voice was already thick with a nasal sound. It's really you. My God, where are you? Get ready to go home. Huh? Luo Zhan could not tell what he was feeling at the moment. Was he happy? Far more than that. His mind was already muddy, and his mind was full of one message. Second brother is still alive. Second brother is not dead. Luo Zhan had lived for 31 years, and it was the first time he felt that he could be so neurotic. Chapter 647. Li Xiqing seemed to laugh and said, Slow down. Okay, slow down. Luo Zhan hung up the phone, said goodbye to his men, and went out the door. At the same time, she dialed Ming's number. Ming had not been well in the past few years. He pushed all the blame for his second brother's death onto himself. In addition to Lily's annoyance, Ming vented it all on his work. Recently, the speed of O Group's development in China had far exceeded the results of previous years, all because of Ming's dedication. When Ming received Luo Zhan's plan, the meeting had just begun. Seeing that it was Luo Zhan, Ming did not care, turned off the phone on silent, and continued the meeting. Luo Zhan called several times and finally couldn't get through, so he drove in the direction of the old house of the Li family. When the car just arrived at the door of the old house, he received a call from Li Jinan. Su Qianxi was driving, and Li Xiqing directly answered the car phone. "Sister-in-law, I just posted on Weibo, third brother," Li Xiqing shouted with a faint smile in his voice. "Come home. I am afraid of being beaten." Li Jinan heard this voice, was silent for a moment, and then said, "Alive?" Li Xiqing's smile widened, and he responded, "Alive." Li Jinan seemed to laugh, and his voice was very light. Soon, Li Jinan hung up the phone, and the busy tone came. The car had stopped, and Su Qianxi couldn't wait. She opened the door, ran to the passenger seat, and pulled Li Xiqing out. It could be seen that Su Qianxi was in a very good mood. Li Xiqing's eyes were softer, and he let her pull him toward the door. But she was not in a hurry to pull him in. She let him stand at the door, got in, and shouted, "Desu, Grandpa, Mom, and Dad, are you all there? Come out. Something big has happened." Desu, Ursu, and little Mosin were all painting in the room. Hearing their mother's cry, they all looked at the tutor. Grandpa was preparing to take a nap in the room. At this moment, hearing Su Qianxi's cry, he came out with a cane and said with a smile, "What's wrong? Why are you so happy?" "Grandpa." Su Qianxi greeted him and asked, "Where are my parents?" Qin Shuhua quickly came out. Seeing Su Qianxi, she asked, "What's wrong?" "Mom." Desu and Ursu ran out, and Li Mosin followed closely behind. The tutor also came out. Su Qianxi saw it and smiled. "You could get off work today." The tutor was a little surprised, but she quickly nodded, went back to pick up her bag, and left work. Su Qianxi was preparing Grandpa and said, "Grandpa, if Xiqing comes back, will you be very happy?" Captain Li was shocked and sighed sadly. He said, "Qianqian, Xiqing has been gone for so many years. You should face the reality. Lu is very good. Why don't you like him?" "This Shu." The smile on Su Qianxi's face became brighter. Looking at Captain Li, she said, "If he hears it, he will not be happy. He is standing outside now." When Li Jianwei heard that, she blinked her big round eyes like black grapes and said, "Is it Daddy?" As she spoke, she ran outside with her two short legs and suddenly shouted, "Ah! Dash!" Chapter 648. In front of her was a tall and straight figure. Li Jianwei looked up and saw the blazing sun shining on the top. The man in front of her was also looking down at her against the light. His delicate facial features and well-defined lines were exactly the same as the photos Li Jianwei had seen. The little girl's eyes were wide open and she shouted, "It's really Dad." The sweet voice melted Li Xiqing's heart. No one taught her, and she called him Dad so clearly, which caught Li Xiqing off guard. As if something had hit him, an indescribable emotion suddenly came over him. A strange sense of happiness suddenly invaded him. Li Xiqing squatted down and held Li Jianwei in his arms. Looking at her little face, which was somewhat similar to Su Qianxi's, he smiled. However, his throat seemed to be blocked by something, and his eyes were slightly sore. Li Xiqing wanted to speak, but he could not say a word. Li Jianwei looked at the strange and familiar man in front of her, blinked, and touched Li Xiqing's ear with her soft palm. But when she touched it, she immediately let go. The little girl smiled happily. Li Xiqing stroked her soft hair with two small braids. His hands were slightly trembling. Li Xiqing noticed his nervousness and felt a little funny. Chuckling, Li Xiqing held the little girl and whispered, "Do you know me?" "Yes." Li Jianwei reached out and grabbed his arm. Her voice was sweet, and she looked at him with a smile. "You are Dad." Everyone inside clearly heard Li Jianwei's crisp voice. Except for Su Qianxi, everyone was shocked. "Xiqing?" Qin Shuhua was surprised and found it hard to believe. She quickly walked to the door, but before she reached the door, she saw a tall figure holding a little girl coming in. Familiar eyes, familiar outline. Who else could it be but Li Xiqing? "Oh, my mother!" Qin Shuhua blurted out and subconsciously took 2 steps back. In less than 2 seconds, her tears were overflowing. She asked incredulously with a trembling voice, "Xiqing?" Li Xiqing held the child, nodded, and called Mom. Qin Shuhua was too excited to speak. She walked up and asked, "Is it really you? Is it really my son?" Captain Li saw Li Siqing behind, and his eyes were also wide open, looking at the figure incredulously. Li Jianqian stood behind Su Qianxi, watching the man in the photo suddenly come to life. He was so shocked that he clenched his hands. Li Mosen's eyes were wide open, looking at Li Jianyue, who was being held by her father. Su Qianxi saw him coming in with his daughter and smiled. She looked down at him and said, "Dad." Hearing that, Li Jianxian pursed his lips and did not speak. A pair of eyebrows that were the same as Li Siqing's looked at him with incomprehensible anger. However, Li Siqing had no time to look elsewhere. Qin Shuhua walked over to him and put a pair of old hands on his body. Feeling this real touch, Qin Shuhua could not help but sob. "You're finally back. You're still alive." Everyone thought he was dead. Su Qianxi's belief was regarded as a psychopath by all of them. Chapter 649. Her son was back. Her son did not die. He really did not die. He really came back. Qin Shuhua burst into tears and opened her arms to hug Li Siqing. Li Jianrue did not quite understand what this meant. It was the first time that she saw her grandmother crying, and crying so sadly. She pouted and cried with her. Wow. Li Siqing held the little girl in one hand and his mother in the other. He chuckled, his eyes slightly red. Gently patting Qin Shuhua's back, Li Siqing chuckled and said, "Don't cry. The child is crying because of you." "Grandma, don't cry." Li Jianrue pouted, her face slightly red. Her eyebrows, nose, and eyes were slightly pink, and her round face was wrinkled. Qin Shuhua also smiled and reached out to Li Jianrue. "Grandma, hug me." Li Jianrue leaned toward Qin Shuhua. From a distance, she heard the sound of crutches hitting the ground. The old man came up a little aggressively. Li Siqing looked at him and called, "Grandpa." Hearing this call, the old man's eyes turned red, and he swung the crutches down hard. Su Qianxi exclaimed, and Qin Shuhua also came up to him. Li Siqing was hit with the crutches, but he did not move. Instead, he stood straighter and became a standard military posture. The old man wasn't satisfied with just one hit, so he raised his walking stick and hit his legs again and again. He didn't mix any water in his strikes. Su Qianxi subconsciously thought of the scene of him being beaten half to death in the warehouse 4 years ago. Her heart ached, and tears rushed down. She ran forward to protect him and shouted, "Grandpa, don't hit him anymore." It was also because of this that Su Qianxi found that Grandpa had long been in tears. At this moment, being blocked by her, he gasped and put down the crutches, choking and shouting, "Okay, okay." Li Siqing gently pushed Su Qianxi away, looked at the old man, and said, "Grandpa, continue." The old man's heart was even more suffocated, and he roared, "Do you really think I don't dare?" Then he picked up the crutches and hit him hard. Li Siqing's body was still as straight as a pine tree. "You've grown up. Now that you've grown up, you don't even want your family, your wife, and your children anymore. You little bastard." Every sentence that the old man said was a hard blow. Since he didn't die and stayed outside for 4 years, why didn't you just die outside? Why did you come back, you little ingrate? More than a dozen whips followed. Each whips brought the distinct sound of flesh being whipped. It scared Qin Shuhua and the children. Li Jianxian and Li Mosen were secretly afraid. Li Jianyue was even more direct. She was so scared that she cried. "Why did great-grandpa hit Daddy?" Li Jianyue cried out. "It hurts." Su Qianxi was distressed, but he did not let her go over, so she had to watch. Hearing her daughter's cry, Su Qianxi also cried. Finally, the old man was tired and stopped. Seeing this, Su Qianxi immediately went up and checked his body. She was so distressed that she burst into tears. "Does it hurt?" He held her hand and gently shook his head. His voice was low and soft as he said slowly, "It doesn't hurt." Chapter 650. Su Qianxi pouted and did not speak. She held Li Siqing's hand silently and sobbed. "When your father comes back, let him whip you a few times." "I'm so angry." Captain Li slammed his crutch on the ground looking angry. Lu Sa had not seen Li Xiqing for a long time. She stood on the side with red eyes and tried to smooth things over. Well, it's better to be back than anything else. Captain Li, have a good rest. Captain Li snorted and sat down on the sofa with his crutch. Finally, it was over. Su Qianxi breathed a sigh of relief, looked at the two boys who had been standing on the side, and waved at Li Jianxian. Daisu, come here. Li Jianxian heard it, but did not go over. Instead, he opened his eyes and looked at the tall man next to Su Qianxi. Li Xiqing also looked at him. His eyes were deeper, with a bit of bright light, looking at Li Jianxian's dark and clear eyes. The father and son looked at each other for a long time, and Li Jianxian took the lead and said in an unfriendly tone, "Are you my father?" Li Xiqing heard the little guy's tone, slightly raised an eyebrow, and asked, "What do you think?" Yes, there was no doubt that he was. Since childhood, Su Qianxi would show them photos of Li Xiqing, pointing to the person in the photo and telling them, "This is Dad, this is your father." Moreover, this face was very similar to his own. Li Jianxian knew that he looked very similar to this man. When the elders saw him, they would say, "This is Xiqing's son at a glance," and he looked so similar. Every time Li Jianxian responded politely, but only he knew that he did not want to look like this person. Su Qianxi reminded them every time that Dad was not dead and would come back sooner or later. Everyone thought that she was crazy, but he knew that was not the case. He had heard the conversation between his uncle and her. They had been looking for the news of this man and had not found him, but they all believed that he was still alive. Not only the conversation between his uncle and his mother, but he had also heard the conversation between his mother and his grandparents. He knew that they always knew that he was not dead. But why did he not come back for so many years? Li Jianxian could not understand. If this man really had such deep feelings for home and wife as they said, why did he not go home? At this moment, hearing Li Xiqing's rhetorical question, Li Jianxian felt even more uncomfortable. Looking at Li Xiqing, he pursed his lips and did not make a sound. Su Qianxi noticed that Li Jianxian was not right and said, "Li, let's go in and do our homework." Li Jianxian frowned and glared at Li Xiqing. His childish voice was a little fierce as he shouted, "I don't want to." As he said that, he turned to look at Li Mosin and hooked his arm. "Mosin, let's go in and do our homework." Su Qianxi was a little upset. She grabbed the little guy's arm and said sternly, "You can't do this. He's your dad." Su Qianxi. Li Jianxian turned his head and blushed. "Mom, I always thought that Uncle Lu would be our father. He doesn't want you anymore. Why do you still want me to call him Dad?" Li Jianxian's words shocked everyone, and Su Qianxi was slightly stunned. The little fellow had already flung her hand away and ran inside. Chapter 651. This little guy actually remembered it until now. Su Qianxi felt a little suffocated and looked up at Li Xiqing. Li Xiqing came over and pulled her up. His pair of bright eyes were also a little gloomy at this moment. Su Qianxi did not know that Li Jianxian would have such a reaction and comforted him. "You just came back. He may be just not used to it. He will get better slowly." Li Xiqing grabbed her hand. His eyes were softer and his voice was soft. "Maybe." Captain Li sat on the sofa and heard Li Jianxian's words. He also felt uncomfortable, but more than that, he felt guilty. These words were what he said to the children. In order to let the children win over Su Qianxi and accept Lu Yihan, he often encouraged in front of the children, "Uncle Lu is likely to be your father in the future. You must listen to Uncle Lu." So, well, he seemed to have done something not very good. Captain Li pretended to know nothing, turned his head, picked up the remote control, and turned on the TV. There was a doorbell outside, and Lu Sa opened the door. It was Luo Zhan. As soon as Luo Zhan entered the door, he saw Li Xiqing. His eyes widened, and Luo Zhan almost ran up to him and gave him a big hug. Li Xiqing laughed and gently patted him on the back. Luo Zhan's eyes were slightly red, and he hammered him hard and said with hatred, "Where have you been these years?" Li Xiqing had just been hit a few times on the back. Being hammered like this, he felt a dull pain. Taking a breath, he pushed him away and said, "Doing something big. Something big? What's so big that you've been gone for so many years?" Li Siqing did not explain, blocked his fist, and asked, "Where is O Ming?" "That guy." "Ah." Luo Zhan sighed and looked at Li Siqing with a very complicated look. "How did you survive?" I thought. Not only him, but many people had already thought that he was dead. Luo Zhan had always thought that Su Qianxi was crazy and unwilling to accept the facts. But now seeing Li Siqing, a living person in front of him, Luo Zhan suddenly realized. How is Su Qianxi crazy? She was more clear-headed than anyone else. Now this person who should have died had come back to life. Li Siqing heard the question and chuckled. "Let's talk about it together when O Ming comes." I'm sorry for him. Although he didn't know much about O Ming's recent situation, he had heard a little about it. After Yu Lily had a miscarriage, as O Ming's best friend, he should have been by his side to help him. Who knew that such a thing would happen? Based on O Ming's personality, although he would not say it, Li Siqing knew that O Ming must feel very guilty. Luo Zhan nodded and picked up his phone to call O Ming. This time, O Ming accepted it. "Hello." O Ming's voice came. Li Siqing took the phone from Luo Zhan's hand and called, "O Ming." There was a moment of silence on the other side. Then there was a loud clatter. It sounded like he dropped his phone. Luo Zhan was silent, and so was Li Siqing. After a long while, O Ming's voice was heard. He forced himself to be calm and asked, "Luo Zhan?" "It's me," Li Siqing said. His voice was calm, with a smile that was hard to detect. Chapter 652. "It's me," Li Siqing repeated. There was no response from O Ming, but after a long while, he called out, "No way, Li Siqing." Li Siqing smiled and teased. "I haven't seen you for more than 4 years. Are you stupid?" O Ming felt that he was dreaming. He pinched himself hard, then hung up the phone and directly pressed the video call button. The other side quickly picked up, and Li Siqing's face came into view. "You are still alive? Still alive? Still alive?" O Ming asked a few questions, his face full of disbelief. "Are you really still King alive? Not dead? What do you think?" Li Siqing asked rhetorically. O Ming only felt that his whole body was burning, but at the same time, his eyes were immediately covered with a layer of unknown mist. His eyes were tingling and slightly red, and he asked excitedly, "Where are you?" "Home, the old house." "Wait for me. I'm on a business trip in the capital." O Ming immediately called his assistant. "Help me book the fastest ticket back to Kingstown." The assistant was dazed and said, "But they're still waiting for us to sign the contract. Tomorrow, there's a cooperation with Shangfeng, and the day after tomorrow, cancel all of them." O Ming waved his hand, making the assistant look a little embarrassed. "No need." Li Siqing stopped him and said with a smile, "You go ahead. This time I will not leave." O Ming heard this and saw the assistant's embarrassed expression. After a long while, he nodded and said, "Okay, remember to wait for me." "Of course." Li Siqing smiled slightly, stretched out his fist through the phone screen, and gently bumped it. O Ming also reached out his hand, as if he had touched his fist. Seeing this, the assistant went out again and closed the door. For a time, in the entire conference room, only O Ming was left. O Ming felt a pain in his heart. He sat back in the chair, and even breathing was a little difficult. Finally, he was back. He was still alive. He was still alive. He was finally back. How good he was back. What about her? It was as if the face he had not seen for 4 years appeared in his mind. Her domineering manner, her every action, it was all vividly engraved in his mind. For years ago, she gave birth to his child. She said firmly, "O Ming, do you really think that you are so charming? Don't King tease me." My purpose was clear from the beginning. I wanted money. Now that I have enough money to spend, it's normal for me to want to break up with him. Why should I have her child? I'm not that cheap. I did it on purpose. I did it on purpose. I didn't want her child, so I drugged him. Who told you to touch me? It's not my fault now. You killed your own child with your own hands. At that time, he was so angry that he slapped her across the face and almost choked her to death on the bed. In the end, the nurse came in just in time and asked someone to pull him away. Yu Lily's eyes were red. She covered her neck and glared at him. "O Ming, You will regret this. Regret? The only thing I regret is sleeping with a woman like you. Because of you, I kill my brother. Unless my brother comes back to life, otherwise, I will never have anything to do with you in this life. Get out. Don't appear in Kingstown in the future, or I will find someone to kill you. B*TCH. Too tired. It was too tiring to keep a woman who did not care about him. Oming put his hands on the table and held his head in pain. Chapter 653. He didn't know how long he stayed in the office alone. The secretary knocked on the door, walked in, and said, "Mr. O, the partner is here." "Well, let him sit for a while." "Yes." Oming quickly stood up, went to the bathroom to wash his face, and then went out. After throwing the phone back to Luo Zhan, the two sat on the sofa in the living room and chatted. Su Qianxi went to the children's room and found that Li Jianxian was playing games with Li Mosen in the room, and Li Jianyue was playing dolls with Qin Shuhua in Grandma's room. The children's room was covered with colorful foam mats. Li Jianxian was sitting on the ground at the moment, and his phone was on the bed. Su Qianxi watched him play, and when he killed the monster, she said, "Daisu." Li Jianxian did not turn his head and continued to play. "Are you not happy that Dad is back? Dad has been out for so long, and he wants to see you and Ursu. He has always liked you. Why don't you call him Dad?" Li Jianxian was killed in the game. He threw his phone away unhappily, stood up, and stamped his feet. Su Qianxi pulled Li Jianxian down and put her hands around the little guy so that he could not go away. She said, "Go out with me and call me Dad, okay?" Li Mosen was playing the game, pricking up his ears to listen to the movement here. He had been killed several times. Not good. Li Jianxian struggled to get up unhappily. After finding that he couldn't struggle, he calmed down and said, "I don't like him." "Why? He is your father." "I just don't like him. I hate him." Li Jianxian glanced at Su Qianxi and said, "He doesn't want you and doesn't cherish you at all. He is not as good to you as Uncle Lu." Over the years, how Lu Yihan treated Su Qianxi, everyone had seen it. However, Su Qianxi was just a simple friend to Lu Yihan. She never thought that even Li Jianxian, a little guy less than 4 years old, could see it so clearly. Su Qianxi was slightly stunned, pinched his face, and whispered, "Uncle Lu is Uncle Lu. How can he be compared with Dad? Why not? Uncle Lu can also be our father. Uncle Lu is very good to us. Isn't that right, Mosen?" Li Jianxian looked at Li Mosen. Li Mosen blinked when he heard that. He wanted to nod, but when he saw Su Qianxi's face, he immediately lowered his head and did not say anything. When Li Jianxian saw this, he snorted. "What are you afraid of? My mother won't hit you. Everyone says that your father is a very, very powerful person. He made a lot of money at a very young age. He bought a lot of big houses and a lot of cars. The cars in our yard were all bought by your father. This is what Grandma and Uncle Luo told me. He is very powerful." Li Mosen put his phone aside and rested his chin on the bed. He said in a childish voice, a pair of blue eyes blinking, and his dark brown hair swaying slightly in the wind of the fan. "Your father is still the best. Everyone says that your father is a very, very powerful person. He earned a lot of money at a very young age. Uncle Lu also has a big house and a car." She was silent for a moment before she asked, "Why do you like Uncle Lu so much?" The little boy glanced at Su Qianxi and said without hesitation, "Because Uncle Lu likes you." Chapter 654. No, if he liked you, he would not have left for so long. Li Jianxian's eyes were the same as Li Siqing's, dark and clear. Looking at Su Qianxi with his bright and beautiful eyes, he said, "If you really love someone, you will not be willing to leave." Hearing this, Su Qianxi was shocked. It was hard to believe that this was actually said by a child who was less than 4 years old. Looking at him, she was slightly dazed. "This is what Uncle Lu told me," Li Jianxian said. Su Qianxi was a little moved, and her smile disappeared. She reached out and pinched the little guy's face. Thinking of Lu Yihan, her eyes were a little dim. She said, "Your father has his own difficulties. He was used by the bad guys to protect me. Now the bad guys were defeated by Dad, So Dad is back. Li Jianxian's eyes widened, and he looked at her unhappily. Mom, do you think I'm Ursu? Su Qianxi smiled and whispered, do you remember the last time you and your sister were kidnapped? Yes, the little rabbit was played to death by Ursu. Yes. Su Qianxi smiled even wider. At that time, didn't there appear an uncle with glasses and a hat? Do you remember? Yes, that bad uncle also wanted to catch us. Fortunately, Mom came, or we would have been taken away. No, Su Qianxi shook her head. That person was Dad, but at that time, Dad could not recognize us, so he had to wear a hat and glasses. And the last time at the amusement park, Mom and Ursu almost died. Do you remember? Yes, but because he was still too short, he could not see what happened. It was Lu Yihan who told them later. That time, it was Dad who saved Mom and your sister. The sun was very hot that day, and Dad was sweating all over. After carrying your sister down, he came to pick me up. If Dad did not stop me in time, you would not have a mother in the future. Li Jianxian heard this and felt a little incredible. Really? Of course it's true. Su Qianxi tapped his nose. When did Mom lie to you? But Uncle Lu said that Mom had an illusion. That person was just a kind passerby. It was not that person. That person was long dead. It turns out that he is not dead, isn't it? That day will be him. Li Jianxian was speechless, but he was still a little unconvinced. Then why did he run away later? You made Mom cry so sadly. Why did you make Mom cry? If you love someone, you can't make them cry, right? Did Uncle Lu teach you this? Hearing a 3-year-old say this from time to time, Su Qianxi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Li Jianxian looked up and said confidently, yes. Uncle Lu has taught me many things, unlike that person who has never cared about us since we were young. Hey, Daesu. Su Qianxi suddenly felt a bit exhausted. This little guy was just like his dad, stubborn as soon as he decided on something. Ursu was the best. She was simple and obedient. Although she was not as smart as Daesu, she was much easier to discipline. She felt helpless. Holding the little guy in her arms, she was about to say something when she heard footsteps coming from outside. The familiar frequency was Li Siqing. Chapter 655. His son was a little repulsed. Li Siqing could see it, especially when he heard him call him Uncle Lu. He felt like a cat was scratching his heart. He wanted to catch the little guy and teach him a lesson to see who was his father. But he couldn't. Li Siqing had a headache, took off his shoes, and went into the colorful floor mat. Li Jianxian was watching Li Mosin play the game. Li Siqing walked to the middle of the 2 small beds and squatted down, just opposite them, and asked, "What are you playing?" "New game. I don't know what it's called." Li Mosin answered. He tried to kill the monster with his hands, but he was killed after a few moves. He was a little dejected and shouted, "It's too difficult to kill this big boss. I've died so many times. I'll do it." Li Jianxian took the phone and killed the monster, but after a long time, he was killed twice. He was so angry that he threw the phone away. "It's too difficult to play. I don't want to play anymore." The phone happened to be thrown in front of Li Siqing. Li Siqing picked it up with his big hand and clicked to start again. Wow. Wow! The sound of the monster being killed came constantly, and Li Mosin's thumb moved. He immediately went to the opposite side to watch Li Siqing play. Xiao xiao xiao. This was the sound of a big move in the game, and Li Jianxian knew it clearly. However, the big move he made was usually gone after 2 or 3 sounds, but Li Siqing's big move was nonstop. Wow! So powerful! Li Mosin exclaimed. "Daesu, come and see. Your father is so powerful." Li Siqing heard this, "your father," and immediately had a better impression of Li Mosin. His fingers moved quickly on the phone, and then Li Mosin's exclamation was even louder. Wow, the monster is dying. He's down to half his HP. Li Jianxian's ears moved, and his heart was a little itchy, but he still did not go over. He said with a straight face, "He is an adult, of course. He is powerful." Su Qianxi laughed and said, "But Dad is playing for the first time. I'm also an adult, but I don't know how to play this game." Li Jianxian pouted and sat straight. Bang! The sound of the big boss being killed rang out. Li Mosen's face was already full of admiration. Uncle is so powerful, much more powerful than Uncle Luo. This is the second level. Li Xiqing's eyes softened as he handed the phone to Li Mosen. Come on, call me if you can't beat him. Thank you, Uncle. Li Mosen happily took it and ran to Li Jianxian's side. He sat on the ground and played with it. Li Jianxian watched him play and couldn't help but look up at the man sitting opposite. Li Xiqing was also looking at him. His dark and beautiful eyes were unspeakably deep. Li Jianxian met his gaze and blushed. He snorted and turned his head away, ignoring him. Su Qianxi felt a little distressed. When she was about to say something, Li Xiqing pushed her away and said, "Let's go outside." Li Jianxian was a little surprised. He thought that this man would talk to him. Does he not want me to forgive him? Why wasn't she talking to him? Li Jianxian felt a little angry. There was a lump in his throat, but he held it in. Su Qianxi looked at Li Jianxian and nodded. She stood up and walked out with Li Xiqing. Seeing that they were really ignoring him, Li Jianxian's little face scrunched up in anger, and he shouted, "What's the big deal? Dash." Chapter 656. Both Su Qianxi and Li Xiqing heard Li Jianxian's words. Su Qianxi was shocked, but Li Xiqing curled his lips as if he had expected it. "Don't you go in and comfort him?" This was the first time Su Qianxi had seen the little guy so agitated, as if he was angry. Obviously, he was angered by Li Xiqing. If she did not go in and comfort him, would it make him hate Li Xiqing even more? Thinking of this, Su Qianxi felt a bit distressed. She knew that Li Jianxian liked Lu Yihan very much, but she did not expect that he liked him to this extent. It could be said that Li Jianxian regarded Lu Yihan as his father. This guy was 4 years younger than Lu Yihan, and Li Jianxian was so stubborn. If he was annoyed again, what should she do? Li Xiqing did not care. Seeing her expression, he smiled and put his arm around her waist, whispering, "I have my own plan. This boy's my son, and I know him better than you. Go, you don't even know him." "How do you know him?" Su Qianxi pushed him, thinking he was comforting her. Li Xiqing rubbed her hair and chuckled. "How can I not know him? He also came on my body." Su Qianxi blushed and reached out to hit him. "Go, be serious." Li Xiqing grabbed her hand and pushed her against the wall in front of them. Rubbing his thighs gently, he whispered in her ear, "I can be more improper. You know." Su Qianxi's face was even hotter, and her heart suddenly sped up. She whispered, "Stop it. We are still in the hallway. It is not good to be seen by the children." Li Xiqing laughed, pulled her up, put his arm around her waist, and walked out of the living room with her. Before they went out, they heard Li Jinnan's voice. Li Xiqing had not seen his younger brother for too long. Hearing his voice, he could not help but speed up, but as soon as he went out, he was immediately surprised and shocked. Li Xiao and Li Beixing were also in the living room, looking a bit dusty, as if they had just come back. Noticing the movement behind them, Li Xiao and Li Beixing both turned their heads and looked over. Li Beixing looked like he had seen a ghost and was dumbfounded. Li Xiao, on the other hand, was slightly stunned. He looked at his daughter-in-law, who seemed to be in a good mood, and found it hard to believe. Li Beixing immediately got up from the sofa and walked up to Li Xiqing. Touching him, he exclaimed, "Oh my God, he's alive!" Su Qianxi couldn't help laughing. Even Li Xiqing couldn't help but smile and call out, "Brother, Dad, third brother, I'm back." It was a familiar voice, a familiar face, but his figure seemed much thinner. Li Beixing laughed loudly, opened his arms, and hugged Li Xiqing. Unable to contain his joy, he said, almost cheering, "Second brother. It really is second bro." Li Xiao was behind and saw everything clearly. Holding his cap in his hand, he walked toward Li Xiqing. Li Xiao's eyes were slightly red. After 4 years, Li Xiao's hair had turned white and he looked much older. Li Xiqing's heart ached. Looking at Li Xiao, he gently pushed Li Beixing away and said, "Dad." Li Xiao walked up and reached out to touch him. He put his hand on his arm and nodded. "You're back." His voice was slightly choked, so faint that it was hard to hear. Li Xiqing nodded. When he was about to speak, he heard Li Xiao roar, "Kneel! Dash!" Chapter 657. This shout, which caught everyone off guard, caused everyone to be startled. Last time, in the study, Li Xiao asked him to kneel, but he did not. At that time, Li Xiqing stood straight and said that he was not wrong. This time, Li Xiqing looked unexpectedly calm. He gently pushed Su Qianxi away, bent his legs, and knelt down. "I'm sorry, Dad. I was wrong." Li Xiao looked at Li Xiqing's bluntness and gasped. Eyes red, he roared, "Beixing, bring me my military whip." "No need." An old voice came gently. Captain Li walked toward Li Xiqing with cane. Glaring at Li Xiqing, he raised his cane and hit Li Xiqing twice. "I've already hit this bastard dozens of times. My hands are sore. Do you want to kill him?" Li Xiao went up to help Captain Li and did not say anything. Li Beixing took a glance and pretended to be deaf and dumb, pretending not to hear anything. Li Xiao stared at Li Xiqing, snorted, and asked, "Where the hell have you been these years?" Li Xiqing was silent for a moment, looked up at Li Xiao, and asked, "Dad, can I stand up and talk? My son is still in there. It's not good to see him." When Li Xiao heard that, he was so angry that he laughed and almost kicked him. Li Xiqing quickly dodged and stood up from the ground. Su Qianxi was afraid that he would fall, so she quickly held him and called, "Dad." Seeing this, Li Xiao snorted, looked unhappy but did not say anything. He went to the sofa and sat down. "I heard that the fire was very big that day. How did you escape?" He also heard that this guy seemed to be beaten half to death, so serious that he could not move. How did he escape later? This question, not only Li Xiao was curious, but even Captain Li, Luo Zhan, Su Qianxi, and the other 4 people had already stretched their necks, waiting for his explanation. Li Xiqing walked over and sat down in front of Li Xiao. Li Beixing, Li Jinan, and Li Xiao sat together, while Su Qianxi and Li Xiqing sat on the sofa with Grandpa, facing each other. Luo Zhan sat on the sofa and made tea. Seeing that Li Xiqing was not whipped, he was a little disappointed. "I was saved by Tang Minjing." The first sentence shocked everyone, especially Su Qianxi, who held his hand and was shocked. Li Xiqing held her hand and said slowly, "She came back, and Bo Xiao followed her in and shot the policeman who was watching me. Then Bo Xiao and Tang Minjing carried me out. Rong Anna led the police away and went to pick them up, and I was thrown in the trunk. Then they sent me to a small hospital. I was in a coma for a week and was lying in bed for more than half a year." Li Xiqing, and Li and Xiao. Lu Sa and Qin Shuhua were busy in the kitchen. Qin Shuhua came out with fruit and happened to hear what Li Xiqing said. She was so distressed that she burst into tears. Putting the fruit on the table, Qin Shuhua sat next to Li Xiao, her eyes red. Su Qianxi was not much better than Qin Shuhua, holding Li Xiqing's hand tighter and tighter. Chapter 658. Jing Sa's real identity is a criminal police officer. She asked me if I would like to be undercover with her. I was injected with drugs by Tang Minjing and became addicted. "You took drugs?" Li Beixing looked shocked and stared at Li Xiqing. Li Xiqing looked at Li Beixing and nodded. Su Qianxi subconsciously thought of the voice she heard that night. Li Xiqing's pain, Li Xiqing's roar, Li Xiqing's helplessness, so real. It turned out to be true. It was true. Holding his hand tightly, Su Qianxi's heart was torn. Jing Sa promised to help me get rid of drugs, but the condition was that I must help her wipe out the drug trafficking gang. I agreed, and then we spent half a year to get rid of drugs. Under the cover of Jing Sa, I trained with those criminal police officers, pretending to be imprisoned while collecting evidence of their crimes with the police. Although the words expressed were very simple, Luo Zhan's mind seemed to have imagined how thrilling that situation was. Shocked, he couldn't help but think, that's third brother. If it were him, he would definitely die there. Just last month, I tried to disclose information to her and let her help me reach a cooperation with TL. I succeeded. The time to defeat TL has been greatly shortened. Only by solving TL, first can we go deep into the Bo group. Sure enough, as soon as TL fell, the Bo group couldn't help but start to transfer goods and clear their guilt. However, because of this, I was exposed. In the end, everyone was even more shocked. But fortunately, there was no danger. Now I'm back, right? Li Xiqing held Su Qianxi's hand tightly, his slightly rough hand gently stroking, his voice low and soft. It's okay, don't be afraid. Old Master Li immediately thought of the news he had seen this morning and said, The bow group you're talking about, is it the bow musical instrument? I heard they ran away. What should we do? Li Xiqing's eyes darkened, and he said, This is the disadvantage of being exposed. If we had another half a month or a month, we could have perfectly hidden and arrested all of them. This time, the operation was too hasty. We have already alerted the enemy, and the leader has run away. However, they can't protect themselves now, and they won't come back in a short time. More importantly, he had bought a line. As long as they couldn't bear it and couldn't help but touch that line, the people he arranged could capture them at any time. There shouldn't be a problem with his thread. Li Xiqing's eyes were slightly deep, and he was still thinking. Qin Shuhua burst into tears, hit Li Xiao, and scolded. Xiqing has suffered so much outside, and you still want to hit him. What kind of father are you? Li Xiao sighed and did not speak. Lu Sa was almost done in the kitchen. She didn't know what they were talking about outside. Seeing such a heavy atmosphere, she shouted, Let's eat. Call the children out for dinner. Then you won't go back in the future, will you? Li Xiao asked. Li Xiqing shook his head. No, I won't. Leave the rest to the police. It has nothing to do with me. That's good. Let's eat. Li Xiao stood up, and the family quickly went to the table. Su Qianxi took the children to the dining room, and Li Jianxian's little face was not very good. Chapter 659. Ursa wants to eat crab. Li Jinyue's sweet voice sounded, pointing to the big red crab on the table, smacking her lips and looking at Su Qianxi. Mom, I want to eat cakes. Su Qianxi smiled, took a crab, and said, Let Dad open it for you, okay? Li Jinyue looked at the red crab, drooling, and immediately nodded. Su Qianxi gave her other dishes and said, Eat something first, and let Dad open it for you. Li Xiqing's lips curved slightly, and he directly opened the crab roe with his long fingers. He carefully removed the inedible parts of the crab roe and asked, Can Ursa dip it in vinegar? Yes. Ursa licked her mouth and looked at the red crab roe with desire. Li Xiqing took it in his hand and dipped it in vinegar. He deliberately teased her across Su Qianxi and said, What did you call me? Dad. Li Jianyue had no position or principles at all. She stared at the crab roe in his hand and shouted, Dad, I want to eat that. Li Xiqing was overjoyed and moved closer to her mouth. Li Jianyue directly opened her mouth and smiled happily. Su Qianxi scooped a spoonful of rice and sent it to her mouth. Li Jianyue also opened her mouth and kept chewing. Li Jianxian looked at this side while digging for rice. He looked at Luo Zhan enviously and shouted, Uncle Luo, I want it too. Luo Zhan ate and didn't even want to look at him. He said, Let your dad open it for you. Your dad is very good at opening crabs. Li Jianxian saw that he was unwilling, turned his head away unhappily, snorted, and went to catch a crab. But, staring at the red crab, Li Jianxian was at a loss. Li Mosen looked at him in surprise and asked, Daisu, do you know how to open a crab? Li Jianxian felt provoked and said with a sullen face, Of course, it's not a big deal. Uncle Lu taught me. It's very easy. With that, he took the crab and shrank his hand because of the heat. He slowly peeled the crab roe for her and said, Eat more. The crab in this season is especially delicious. Su Qianxi knew that he did it on purpose. Subconsciously glancing at Li Jianxian, she saw that his little face was wrinkled and his eyes were a little red. He turned his head and glared at Li Xiqing. He simply put the crab on the table and stopped eating. If you don't want to eat, then don't eat. What's the big deal? Oomph. Li Jianxian took the spoon and dug the meatballs not far in front of him to eat, but he was unwilling to call Li Xiqing Dad. The adults looked at each other and then at Li Xiqing. Li Xiqing was eating slowly, his movements smooth and elegant. He did not look like he wanted to open a crab for the child at all. Su Qianxi nudged him and said, Daisu likes it too. Oh, really? Li Xiqing looked at Li Jianxian and asked, Do you want to eat? I'll open it for you. Li Jianxian looked away with red eyes and said coldly, I don't want to. Oh, then forget it. Li Xiqing didn't mind at all. He peeled a crab leg, dipped it in vinegar, and brought it to Ursu's mouth. Ursu happily opened her mouth and ate it, shouting happily, it's delicious. Thank you, Dad. The smile on Li Xiqing's face was rare, and he subconsciously glanced at Li Jianxian. Chapter 660. Li Xiqing chuckled and shook his head at her. Su Qianxi finally couldn't help it. She put the crab roe that Li Xiqing had just dug in her bowl into Li Jianxian's bowl and said, Daisu, eat some. It's delicious. Li Jianxian looked down and was a little happy, but he did not eat it immediately. After picking up something else, he slowly ate it with the rice. Is it delicious? It's okay. I don't like it very much now. I only eat it because you gave it to me, Li Jianxian said deliberately without looking up. Su Qianxi couldn't help but laugh. Li Xiqing laughed and said, I was not so proud when I was a child. Li Jianxian blushed and glared at him unhappily. After finishing the rice in the bowl, he got off the stool and shouted, I'm full. After saying that, he scurried away. When Li Jianxian ran away, Su Qianxi was not happy. She reached out and pinched Li Xiqing's waist and said, That's your son. Who are you angry with? Childish. Li Xiqing touched his waist with some grievance and said, It is obvious that the boy is angry with me. Why don't you hit him? Why do you hit me? Su Qianxi glared at him, pushed him away, and turned back to eat. Li Jianan saw them like this, smiled, and bowed his head to eat. Finally back, the old Su Qianxi. After dinner, Su Qianxi asked Li Mosin to take Li Jianxian to play, and she went to the little guy's room. Li Jianxian did not turn on the light, and the light was very dim. The little guy was sitting in front of the stool, drawing alone. Noticing that Su Qianxi came in, he immediately closed the album. Su Qianxi turned on the light and saw the album under his hands. She gently closed the door and came over. What are you drawing? Su Qianxi's voice was soft. She walked to the little guy, half bent down, and glanced at the album he hid under his hands. Can you show it to Mom? Li Jianxian heard it and was a little unhappy. He shook his head. This is my secret. Mom doesn't want to see it. She chuckled and rubbed his hair. Little thing, secrets. Mom, although I'm still a child, I also have secrets. Li Jianxian pursed his lips unhappily and slapped her hand away. Our Daisu has grown up and has his own little secrets that he doesn't want his mother to know. She looked sad and sat down on the bed behind him. Don't you like Dad? I hate him. Li Jianxian was unhappy, very unhappy. Why? Why? Li Jianxian didn't know why, but he just didn't like it. He hated it. Why did he talk to Ursu instead of him? Why did he open the crabs for Ursu, but not for him? Li Jianxian felt it was unfair, but he couldn't bring himself to say it. A pair of tender little hands, holding the album in his arms, Li Jianxian quietly pouted. Let Daddy take us to play tomorrow, okay? Where does Daisu want to go? Li Jianxian shook his head, feeling wronged, and said, No, I don't want to go with him. I miss Uncle Lu. Mom, can you only call Uncle Lu? Uncle Lu would not treat him like this. Uncle Lu was very good to him, unlike this person, who was not good to him at all. Chapter 661. Uncle Lu is very busy, and Uncle Lu is not as good as Dad. I think Uncle Lu is better than that person. Li Jianxian was about to cry, and his voice was choked. What's so great about him? Uncle Lu is much better than him. Li Jianxian had been sensible for a long time, and he had not cried for a long time. Now his expression, although he did not cry, was more distressing than if he had cried directly. Su Qianxi reached out and pulled him over, coaxing him as before, hugging him and whispering, Don't cry, Daisu is a boy. Li Jianxian felt even more wronged, holding his mother's shoulder with one hand, sobbing but not crying out. Dad likes you very much, but Daisu doesn't seem to like Dad very much. If Daisu sees a person who doesn't like you very much, will you still play with him? No way. Su Qianxi whispered. This is the same reason. No one wants to play with someone who doesn't like them. I don't want to play with him. I just hate him. Li Jianxian buried his mother's arms and denied. I don't want to play with him. He is your father. Haven't you always been envious of other children who have a father to lift them up? Let's find a father to lift us up, okay? That's Ursu. I'm not envious. So childish. Li Jianxian wiped his tears and snorted. As soon as Li Jianxian's voice fell, he heard crisp laughter coming from outside. Li Jianyue's lively and happy laughter sounded very attractive. Soon, the door of the room was opened, and the laughter was even louder. Li Xiqing came in, and a little girl was sitting on his neck, laughing constantly. Li Jianyue held Li Xiqing's head, her little hand on his forehead, and Li Xiqing's big hand was holding the little girl's waist, walking in. Li Jianyue looked very happy and shouted, "Brother, brother, raise up. It's so fun." The bell-like laughter was refreshing, and Su Qianxi felt warm when she heard it. Li Jianxian saw this scene, and he felt even more unhappy. The tears of grievance that he had tried so hard to hold back suddenly became hot again. However, he was a man, and he could not cry. But, looking at his sister riding on the man's neck, Daisu's heart was indescribably uncomfortable. How nice poo-poo-poo. He didn't care. What's so great about it? Turning his head away, Li Jianxian ran to his small bed and said, "You're so noisy. I'm sleepy. I want to sleep. If you want to play, get out." "Ah!" Li Jianyue screamed, followed by a cheerful laugh. Her two pigtails waved in the air as she supported herself with her fair and chubby hands. "Big brother, come play with us. Daddy is so tall." Li Jianxian breathed quickly and felt like he was about to cry. He covered his head with a quilt and shouted, "You're so annoying. Why are you playing here? Go out and don't disturb me." Li Mosen ran in from outside, holding a large piece of the puzzle in his hand. He shouted happily, "Uncle, uncle, look, I put it together." "Wow." Li Jianyue looked at him in surprise. "Brother Mosen is too amazing. My brother has been trying for a few days, but he still can't finish it." Chapter 662. Hee, Dad is the best. Li Jianyue held Li Xiqing's head, feeling a little proud. But when she saw her brother curled up in the quilt, she said, "Dad, I want to go down." Li Xiqing looked up at her and said, "Okay, get ready. I'm going to throw you away." Then he threw the little fellow, scaring Li Jianyue and making her scream. The big hand rolled her up and quickly held her in his arms. Li Jianyue laughed loudly, and there was a layer of sweat on her body, which was a little steaming. Li Xiqing touched her body and said, "Let Mom take you to take a bath." "I want to take a bath with Dad." "Mom, too. Let's take a bath together." Li Jianyue was a little excited, holding Li Xiqing's arm. "Dad, okay." Li Xiqing's eyes were a little smile, and his lips were raised. He picked her up, pinched her little face, looked at her lovingly, and said, "No, there is a difference between men and women. We can't take a bath together. Dad and brothers will take a bath together, and you and Mom will take a bath together, okay?" Li Jianyue pouted unhappily and said, "Okay." Li Xiqing rubbed her little face, turned his face, and said, "Kiss Dad. Mua." Li Jianyue hugged Li Xiqing's neck and kissed his face. Li Xiqing was overjoyed and pointed to the other side of his face. "This side. Mua." Li Jianyue kissed both sides and said with a smile, "Mom, kiss." Su Qianxi held the little fellow in her arms, and Li Jianyue kissed both of Su Qianxi's cheeks. Li Xiqing looked at his daughter and wife, and his heart seemed to melt. He reached out and hugged them, looking at Li Jianxian, who was wrapped up in a ball on the small bed in the corner. Su Qianxi lowered her head and whispered to Li Jianyue, "Go, wake up brother to take a bath." Li Jianyue immediately got off. Su Qianxi went over and pulled the quilt of Li Jianxian and shouted, "Brother, take a bath. I'm sleepy. I want to sleep." Li Jianxian covered himself with the quilt. His voice was muffled and sounded a little nasal. When Li Jianyue heard that, she pouted and exposed him mercilessly. "Brother is lying. I can't fall asleep at this time. You'll only fall asleep if you play games with Brother Mosen." Li Jianxian covered his head and was unwilling to get up. Li Xiqing strode forward and lifted the quilt off Li Jianxian's head. As soon as he lifted it up, a gust of hot air immediately surged up. Only then did he realize that the little fellow was already drenched in sweat. It was very hot. Li Xiqing threw the quilt away in disgust and lifted Li Xiqing up by his collar. Li Jianxian was lifted like a chicken, and his whole body was suspended in the air. Immediately, he felt that his dignity was being challenged. His hands and feet flailed as he shouted, "Let me go! Let me go, you bad man!" Li Xiqing narrowed his eyes, exuding a dangerous aura. Looking at the little guy, he asked, "What did you call me?" Although Li Jianxian was young, he was also extremely sensitive to the emotions of people around him. At this moment, seeing Li Xiqing like this, he knew that he was very likely to be unhappy. His heart skipped a beat, and Li Jianxian was a little scared. But soon, not to be outdone, he shouted, "Bad man, let me go, why are you grabbing me? I hate you." Chapter 663. Li Mosin blinked and silently watched from his side. Li Xiqing saw him like this, put his big hand on his head and said, "Let's go take a bath." The little guy heard the words, was a little surprised, and quickly followed. The little heart was pounding, and Li Mosin's mood was actually a little excited, as if he was also his father. Li Jianxian struggled all the way and shouted, let me go, you bad man, I don't want to take a bath with you." Li Xiqing was unhappy, lifted him up and spanked him twice. "Bad boy, don't you need to take a bath? It's none of your business. I want Uncle Lu. You're not good to me. Only Uncle Lu is good to me. I don't want you to be my father." Li Jianxian shouted, and what he said made the originally kind atmosphere around Li Xiqing immediately cold. Li Xiqing stopped, and Su Qianxi saw this and was shocked. "Honey," but before Su Qianxi's words were finished, Li Xiqing had already opened the bathroom door, pushed Li Mosin in, and immediately locked the door. Su Qianxi was shocked. This guy, is he going to close the door and beat the child? Li Xiqing did not like Lu Yihan, and Su Qianxi knew this. This boy undoubtedly touched Li Xiqing's bad luck. What should she do? Su Qianxi went to knock on the door, and Li Xiqing's voice quickly came from inside. He said, "I will give him a bath. You take Ursu to take a bath." But how could Su Qianxi rest assured? Su Qianxi had never beaten Desa before. Although this little guy was young, his mind was much more mature than children of the same age. His self-esteem was also very strong. If he was beaten by Li Xiqing, could he forgive Li Xiqing in the future? Could he? No way. Standing at the door for a while, Su Qianxi made sure that she did not hear any bad sounds before she took Ursu to her room and gave her a bath. Li Jianxian was put down. His little face was angry, and his eyes were red, but the tears refused to fall. He looked at Li Xiqing as if he was looking at a criminal who had committed a heinous crime. Li Xiqing released the water. When he turned around, Li Mosin had already taken off his clothes. He urged, "Desu, quickly take off your clothes. Let's take a bath together." Li Jianxian snorted and turned around. Li Xiqing turned the water on and said to Li Mosin with disdain, "Ignore him. This guy wants to go out and bathe with girls. He's not a man. You're the one who wants to bathe with a girl. You're not a man." Li Jianxian shouted angrily. Li Xiqing began to unbutton his shirt. The expression on his face was still disdainful as he said, "Isn't it? You must want to bathe with your mother and sister because you're no longer a boy, so you don't want to bathe with us. Mosin, let's despise him together." When Li Mosin heard that, he stuck his tongue out at Li Jianxian. "I despise you." Li Jianxian's face became redder, and he shouted, "Who said I don't want to take a bath with you? So you miss me?" Li Xiqing looked at him with a faint smile. "No one showers with clothes on. Are you shy?" As he spoke, he had already taken off his pants. Chapter 664. Li Xiqing tested the temperature of the water and took Li Mosin in. Li Mosin cheered, "It's so comfortable. Desu, come in." Li Jianxian took off his underwear. Just as he was about to walk in, his body was suddenly picked up by a big hand. The little guy only felt a burst of comfort in his heart, and his little face was inexplicably red. Then, the whole person had already fallen into the water. Li Xiqing also took off his clothes and stepped in. Li Mosin smiled happily inside, and his blue eyes looked as beautiful as sapphires through the mist. Li Jianxian squatted in the big bathtub, and there was a special feeling in his heart. He was taking a bath with an adult. He was really taking a bath with his father. Li Jianxian blinked and heard Li Mosen exclaim, saying, "Uncle's feet are so hairy. Hey, there is hair here, there is hair here, there is hair here." Li Mosen's reaction was as if he had discovered a new continent, and his face was full of surprise. Li Jianxian couldn't help but look in the direction pointed by Li Mosen, and finally saw the mighty domineering of an adult man, and couldn't help but clamp his legs. So disgusting. Li Jianxian blushed, hugged his knees, and let the water cover his chin. "You don't know how to take a bath yourself?" Li Xiqing looked at the two little guys and took the jar next to him. "Bubble bath? What the hell?" Li Xiqing threw the thing back, took a soap, and waved to Li Jianxian. "Come here." Li Jianxian snorted, turned his head, and ignored him. Li Xiqing chuckled. Who did this kid's temper resemble? It was so strange and weird, like a fried dough twist. Seeing that he ignored him, Li Xiqing waved to Li Mosen. Li Mosen half swam and half crawled over, and soon sat in front of Li Xiqing. It was also the first time that Li Xiqing bathed the child. He applied the soap to him, and then realized that he needed to wash his hair. He picked up the shower head to wash the little guy's hair, and then rubbed his body. It was the first time that Li Mosen was bathed by a man, especially by such a father-like figure, and he was both happy and excited. Looking at Li Jianxian sitting on the side with an unhappy face, Li Mosen expressed that he did not understand what this guy wanted to do. If it was his father, he would definitely ask his father to take him out to play. Li Xiqing patiently bathed him, put him aside, and waved at Li Jianxian. "Come here." Li Jianxian was unwilling and continued to sit in the water. Without hesitation, Li Xiqing pulled Li Xiqing over and rubbed his hair and bathed him the same way. It was just that his movements were clearly more practiced and gentler. God knew that this was the first time Li Xiqing had served a child, but he was so patient. Even he found it incredible. After changing the water several times and cleaning the two children, he suddenly realized that he hadn't brought any clothes with him. Wrapping a towel around his waist, he carried the two children out, one in each hand. Li Mosen's eyes were shining, and Li Jianxian was also a little stunned. That was amazing. She was hugging both him and Mosen at the same time. Li Jianxian blinked and looked up at Li Xiqing's face, which was very similar to his own. Chapter 665. After searching for a long time, Li Xiqing found two sets of cartoon pajamas for boys, a set of blue Ultraman and a set of gray checkered pajamas. Li Xiqing threw the Ultraman to Li Mosen and the checkered pajamas to Li Jianxian. He said, "Wear them yourself. A man must learn to be self-reliant." Li Mosen nodded with excitement and looked at Li Xiqing with admiration. He said, "Uncle, you are so amazing. How do you know that this is mine and that is Daisu's?" Li Xiqing did not answer, but helped him unbutton and chuckled. "Do you want to know?" Li Mosen nodded and looked at him with stars in his eyes. Li Jianxian also looked at him. In his eyes that were the same as Li Xiqing's, his dark pupils were shining brightly. Li Xiqing glanced at Li Jianxian and asked, "Do you want to know, too?" Li Jianxian met his gaze and blushed. He said, "I don't really want to know." With a chuckle, Li Xiqing said, "Because Daisu is my son." Li Mosen heard it and felt amazing. He nodded as if he understood. Li Jianxian was stunned, and a wonderful feeling in his heart rose. Because he was his son, he knew that the clothes were his. Li Jianxian did not quite understand what this sentence meant. Before he could figure it out, Li Xiqing had already stood up and said, "I'm going back. You two get dressed and play by yourself. Go to bed early." "Okay, uncle. Bye." Li Jianxian did not speak. Li Xiqing glanced at Li Jianxian and touched Li Mosen's head. "See you tomorrow." "Yeah." But when Li Xiqing walked to the door, Li Jianxian said, "You haven't put on your clothes yet. Are my clothes here?" Li Xiqing only asked one sentence, then opened the door and walked out. Li Jianxian blushed, and he was a little excited. This kind of excitement came inexplicably, But Li Jianxian's mood, that had not been very happy today, suddenly became better. Li Xiqing walked back to the room, wearing only a bath towel. When he opened the door, Su Qianxi was shocked. She hurriedly pulled him in and took a look outside. Fortunately, there were no guests. This fellow was too audacious. Su Qianxi turned around and closed the door. However, before she turned around, a hot body hugged her from behind. It was so strong that she was caught off guard and let out a yelp. He turned her around and pressed her against the wall. Lowering his head, he kissed her lips, his big hands roaming all over her body. She struggled a bit, but did not even get rid of his lips. Pushing him away, she looked inside. Li Xiqing did not notice her strangeness. His big hand slid down her thigh, onto her butt, and moved upward. She pushed him hard and even used her knees, but he was getting stronger and stronger. There was no room for her to struggle. "Mommy, I can't pull it up." A tender voice came from inside, with an aggrieved, crying tone. Li Xiqing suddenly opened his eyes and let her go. Su Qianxi gasped, blushed, and pushed him away, saying, "What's the hurry?" The little guy ran out holding his nightdress, his little face blushing, and ran toward her with his short legs. The original channel is on QQ Reading. Those who read pirated versions and come to scold me, please have some self-respect. Everyone, please support the original version. Chapter 666. The little fellow ran out of the room, tugging at his nightgown. His face was flushed, and he ran towards her with his short legs. Li Xiqing immediately went into the bathroom not far from the door and closed the door. Seeing the clothes Li Jianyue was wearing, Su Qianxi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The little girl's head and one hand were through the neckline, and the other sleeve had been put on. The little hand was holding the clothes under the armpit, looking at Su Qianxi with a pair of wet eyes. Li Jianyue did not notice that another man had just appeared here. She pouted and said, "The clothes are so hard to wear." Su Qianxi squatted down and pulled her hand up, gently blocking the neckline with her hand to prevent the clothes from rubbing the child's skin. She whispered, "Come on, reach up." "Yes." Shrink in, guiding the child to untie the clothes. Su Qianxi put them on again. After fiddling with them, she scratched her little nose and picked her up. "Mom will take you back to sleep." "Oh." Li Jianyue put on her clothes, but she was still a little depressed. She pouted and said, "Where is Dad?" "Dad is in the bathroom." "Ursu, be good. Go back to sleep. Let Dad take us to play tomorrow, okay?" "Okay." Li Jianyue finally recovered and let Su Qianxi take her back to her room. Li Jianxian and Li Mosen were sitting on the ground playing a puzzle. The puzzle was on the bed. Su Qianxi put Li Jianyue on the bed that they used as a table, and the little girl immediately looked around happily. Su Qianxi looked at the time. It was already 20:39 in the evening. She sat on the bed next to them for a while and stayed there until 9 o'clock. She confiscated their puzzle, put it on the high counter, and warned, "Go to sleep. Get up early tomorrow morning and play together." "Okay." Li Jianyue cheered. "Where to play? Let Dad take us there, okay? So go to sleep now and get up at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning. Do you hear me?" "Okay." Li Mosen also responded. Li Jianxian did not speak, but a pair of dark and clear eyes were full of hope. Su Qianxi's heart softened slightly and turned off the light. "Good night." "Good night, Mom." "Good night, Annie." "Good night." She closed the door, and suddenly her heart was beating fast. Time to go back to my room. Thinking of his enthusiasm, she couldn't help blushing. He walked to the door and took 2 deep breaths. After gathering his emotions, he gently turned the doorknob and opened the door. It was dark inside, and the air conditioner was on. She closed the door, locked it, and walked in. It was pitch black inside, and even the curtains were drawn. One couldn't even see their fingers in front of them. She took off her shoes, climbed into bed, and whispered, "Honey." His voice was very soft, as if he was a thief. There was no response. When she just sat on the bed, she was suddenly pushed down by a strong force. A pair of big hands were messing around her waist. She laughed and said, "Stop scratching." Her mouth was sealed, and she felt that even her breath was taken away. His kiss, hot, wild, explosive, and undisguised passion. It had been 4 years. Chapter 667. Li Siqing bent down and picked up his daughter. He glanced at Captain Li and said, "Don't think so much when you're old. It's not good for your health." Captain Li's face turned even redder. He glared at him and said, "Brat, I'm your grandfather. If you weren't my grandfather, I wouldn't care about you. Right, Ursu?" Li Siqing's expression softened as he looked at his daughter. He looked at the little one's sportswear and said, "Let's go. Daddy will take you for a run." Li Jianxian and Li Mosen were playing with the car. When they saw their sister being picked up by their father, there was a trace of envy in their clear eyes. Hearing Li Siqing's words, their hearts beat faster. They were a little nervous and a little expectant. Blushing, Li Jianxian quickly lowered his head and continued to play with the car in his hand. Wow, wow. Li Jianyue was a little excited. Her white and tender face was pink. She grabbed Li Siqing's collar excitedly and looked down at Li Jianxian. "Brother, Daddy will take us for a run." Li Mosen also raised his head, and his eyes were bright. Li Siqing saw Li Mosen like this, and his eyes softened. He went forward and touched Li Mosen's head. "Let's go together." "Yeah." Li Mosen stood up happily and reached out to drag Li Jianxian. "Daisu, let's go for a run." Li Jianxian pouted and said unhappily, "He didn't ask me." Li Siqing heard that and couldn't help but laugh. He pulled his little arm up and rubbed his little face. He said, "Why are you so awkward? Who do you take after?" Captain Li was silently drinking tea. When he heard this, he said, "Weren't you like this when you were a child? You acted like the whole world owed you. Now, you know how to talk about your son? I wasn't so awkward when I was a child. This kid must have a genetic mutation." Captain Li glanced at him and said, "You and your father are exactly the same. Even if you don't look at the face, your temperament is almost the same. I can tell at a glance that you are biological." Li Jianxian heard these words from the old man, and his little face became even redder. He looked up at the tall man in front of him. A pair of clean and clear eyes were filled with a sparkling, unknown light. Seeing his expression, Li Siqing chuckled and said, "Of course, he is my biological son." As he spoke, he put Li Jianyue down and stuffed her little hand into Li Mosen's. "Bring your sister and follow me." Li Mosen nodded and looked at Li Siqing with admiration. Immediately, Li Siqing's gaze fell on Li Jianxian. Li Jianxian subconsciously took a step back, but then he saw Li Siqing reach out to him, lift him up, and exclaim, "Let's go." Li Siqing said, "Let's go." Li Jianxian was shocked and shouted, "What are you doing? Let me down." "To carry you." Li Siqing carried Li Jianxian out of the door and swung him in his hand. The little fellow was so frightened that his little heart was thumping wildly. But when he looked down, he had an extremely wonderful feeling. Daddy was hugging him. "Mosen, bring your sister and follow me." "Okay." Li Mosen held Li Jianyue's hand and quickly jogged to catch up. Chapter 668. So scary, so high. Li Jianxian looked at the ground, a little scared, but felt the big hand next to him holding him. The little guy couldn't help but get excited. So high, so high. Yesterday, his sister was lifted high, and now it was his turn. It was really fun. Li Jianxian's little face was red with excitement. Looking down, he was a little excited, and his little hands unconsciously held his father's head and looked back. Li Mosen held Li Jianyue's hand and looked envious. Both of them ran with short legs to catch up. This man was just walking, and they couldn't even catch up with him by running. With this awareness, Li Jianxian suddenly felt that this man was so powerful. He was a man. This man was his father, and it was a great feeling. Li Jianxian smiled happily and shouted behind, "Mosen, catch up." Feeling that the little guy was happy, Li Siqing smiled and said, "Hold on tight. I'm going to rush." With that, Li Siqing held him with both hands and suddenly ran. The speed was very fast, and Li Jianxian felt so excited that he was about to fly. He couldn't help but scream, "Ah!" The wind poured into his mouth, and Li Jianxian heard the echo. His little face involuntarily burst into a happy smile, and the laughter was crisp. Li Xiqing was in a better mood. He turned a corner and ran back in the direction of the two little guys. Suddenly, Li Jianxian felt his body was light, and he screamed in fear, but then his body was firmly held by a pair of strong arms. Li Jianxian was scared and opened his eyes wide, but the feeling of excitement and happiness was even more memorable. So fun. So exciting. Is it fun? Li Xiqing looked down at him, a pair of dark and deep eyes, with a little smile, looking at him, eyes slightly curved like a sky full of stars bright and bright. What beautiful eyes! Li Jianxian looked at this pair of eyes, and his cheeks were hot. He couldn't hide his smile and nodded. Fun. Then Dad will take you to play often in the future. Dad! Li Jianxian nodded and raised his arms excitedly. I still want to play. Let's go. Li Xiqing lifted him up again, and Li Jianxian laughed happily. Li Jianyue and Li Mosen followed behind. The little girl pouted and looked unhappy. Daddy is bad. Why didn't you lift me up? Li Mosen looked on enviously from behind. He held Li Jianyue's hand and comforted her. I'll hug you later. Really? Really, I like Ursa the most. Li Jianyue was elated. She tugged on her pants and shook off Li Mosen's hand. She ran forward with her short legs and shouted, Daddy, I want to be raised high. Li Mosen quickly followed and shouted, Ursu, be careful. The old man walked out of the front yard with his walking stick. Seeing this scene, he laughed happily and turned to Lu Sa, who was busy, and said, That's more like a family. Qian has suffered all these years. Lu Sa also smiled. Isn't it? Now that the second young master is back, the children are happy, and the second young mistress is also happy. While talking, she looked at the clock hanging in the living room, smiled, and whispered to the old man, You haven't gotten up yet. You must be tired. When the old man heard Lu Sa's words, he coughed lightly and walked inside with his walking stick. He said faintly, Don't think so much when you are old. It's not good for your health. Chapter 669. When Su Qianxi woke up, it was already cold. Looking at the time, it was already past 8 a.m. Seeing the time on the alarm clock, Su Qianxi suddenly got up, but when she moved, she felt very sore. Asshole! Su Qianxi held her waist and got out of bed. Looking down, her neck and collarbone were covered with purple spots. It was not deep, but it still looked a bit scary. Su Qianxi had a headache. Wrapping herself in a shirt, she went into the bathroom. Especially after seeing the mess on her body, she wailed, Asshole! How can I face people like this? In the summer, she couldn't wear a high-collared shirt, could she? Or a silk scarf? No, this is way too crazy, and it's way too obvious. All right, after taking a shower and applying hot water, it seemed to have faded. Su Qianxi picked up her concealer and applied a few layers. After making sure it was better, she wrapped herself in a bathrobe and walked out. Her hair was wet. Su Qianxi wiped her hair and walked out. When she was drying her hair, the door was knocked, and Li Jianyue's lively and childish voice came, shouting, Mom, get up. Soon the door was opened, and Li Jianyue ran in, wearing pink sportswear and pink sneakers. She rushed to Su Qianxi and pulled the hem of her bathrobe. She shouted, Mom, go out to play. Dad said he would take us out to play. Hurry up. Su Qianxi was drying her hair, wearing nothing under the thin bathrobe. She quickly pulled the clothes back and coaxed. Ursu, Mom will be ready soon. Go outside and wait for me. Oh. Li Jianyue pouted, looked at her mother with a pair of big watery eyes, and said with some grievance, Dad didn't lift me up, sob. Su Qianxi laughed and gently pushed her. Later, let Dad carry you. Go out first and help Mom close the door. Okay. Li Jianyue ran out with her short legs, grabbed the door handle on her tiptoes, and slowly walked out. Just before she closed the door, there was a tall shadow behind her. Turning around, Li Jianyue shouted, Dad. Li Xiqing took her little hand down and said, Go help Lu Sa pack things with your brothers. Dad will take you to a picnic later. Picnic? Li Jianyue's eyes lit up. She nodded and skipped away excitedly. Li Xiqing straightened up and looked at his daughter's back. His smile deepened. Opening the door again, she had just finished drying her hair and put down the hairdryer. Untying the strap of her bathrobe, she was startled to hear the door open. When she saw that it was him, she heaved a sigh of relief. Lock the door. I'll change my clothes. Li Siqing's eyes darkened. He locked the door and walked in slowly. Su Qianxi went to the walk-in closet and opened the closet. Before she picked out the right clothes, Li Siqing hugged her waist. He squeezed her neck, buried his face in her neck, and whispered, "Take the children to the beach for a picnic. Wear a long dress." Su Qianxi blushed, twisted her shoulders, and said, "Then let go of me first. I'll change." Not only did he not let go, but he became even more aggressive. His big hands climbed up her waist, and his lips came up to kiss the corner of her lips. Chapter 670. He did not feel the slightest sense of crisis. Chuckling, he whispered, "Come on, hit me." She threw a punch at him, but in the blink of an eye, her hand was caught by him. Twisting her hand, she was pinned against the cabinet door by Li Siqing. He looked down and sniffed her neck. Feeling a layer of concealer, he couldn't help chuckling. Su Qianxi blushed even more. Pushing him hard, she kicked him and said, "Stop laughing. It's all because of you." His dark eyes became deeper. He put his big hand on the side of her face and kissed her. His knee was between her legs, and his other big hand was around her waist, not willing to let go. Su Qianxi's dark eyes flashed with fear. Pushing him away, she shook her head in resistance. Li Siqing smiled and bit her lips. "Change." Su Qianxi blushed and pushed him away. Turning around, she found a light green floral dress. Standing on tiptoe, she felt for underwear on the top shelf. However, before she found it, a big hand grabbed it for her and asked, "Looking for this?" Su Qianxi grabbed it and pushed him. "Go away. I'm changing. I'm not leaving. Which part of your body have I not seen?" Putting his big hand against her, he raised an eyebrow and teased. "Not only seen, but also kissed and touched. What's there to be embarrassed about?" Su Qianxi heard this and felt even more embarrassed. She pushed her away angrily and went to the washroom to change her clothes while holding her clothes in her hands. Watching her go into the bathroom, Li Siqing didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He took out a pair of flat sandals of the same color from the shoe cabinet and put them on the ground. Looking down, he found that all his clothes and shoes were still there. It was spring when he disappeared, and most of his clothes were long-sleeved. It could be seen that they were well-maintained. The clothes still looked brand new. Most of them were business suits and shirts, and the ties were neatly arranged. Feeling warm, Li Siqing's eyes became softer. Looking back, Su Qianxi had already put on her clothes and walked out. The sleeveless ankle-length dress made her look more gentle. Her long hair was past her waist and casually parted in the middle, making her look even more beautiful. Seeing the shoes on the ground, she quickly put them on and said, "Let's go." "Yes." The couple went out together. When Lu saw them, she was very considerate and didn't ask or look at them. Li Jianxian, Li Jianyue, and Li Mosen were all carrying small school bags and sitting on the sofa in the living room. Each of them was holding a lollipop. Li Jianyue's was the biggest lollipop. When she saw them come out, she licked the candy and happily got down from the sofa. She ran over with her short legs and shouted, "Mom, Dad, can we go now?" Li Siqing picked up the little girl, wiped the sticky corners of her mouth, and whispered, "Let's wait for Mommy to finish breakfast. Mommy will be hungry if she doesn't eat breakfast." The little fellow blinked and urged, "Mommy, hurry up and eat breakfast." "No, we'll eat when we get there." Su Qianxi walked over and took Li Mosen and Li Jianxian. "Let's go." Lu Sa considerately gave Su Qianxi a yogurt. "Then let's eat together later." Su Qianxi took it and thanked her. She looked at the children. "Let's go for a picnic." Chapter 671. He led the children into the car, and the three children naturally sat in the back seat of the car. Su Qianxi sat in the front passenger seat, and Li Siqing drove. Su Qianxi opened the yogurt, and Li Jianyue looked at the back and shouted, "Mom, I want it." Su Qianxi had just taken a sip, and when she heard Ursa say so, she handed the yogurt to the back. But before she handed it over, Li Siqing grabbed her hand and pulled it back. He said seriously, "Ursu, Mom didn't eat breakfast. You can't take it from Mom. Mom will feel uncomfortable when she is hungry." "Oh," Li Jianyue responded, looking in the rearview mirror, licking the lollipop in her hand, looked at the candy, and handed it over. "Mom, do you want candy?" Su Qianxi chuckled and shook her head. "No, Ursu can eat it yourself." Li Jianxian and Li Mosin were holding a model in their hands. The two little guys were facing each other and disassembling it. They didn't even care about eating the candy in their hands. The sea in Kingstown was on the edge of the suburbs. Li Siqing drove for more than an hour before reaching the destination. This was the only sea in Kingstown, and the flow of people was particularly large. However, because it was a tourist attraction under the jurisdiction of state-owned enterprises, it was also divided into VIP areas and ordinary areas. There were obviously fewer people in the VIP area, and it was much cleaner. Today's sun was not very bright, and the weather was a little cloudy, but it was still hot around. The sea breeze was salty, mixed with the cool water vapor, and it was so comfortable that the little guys were a little excited. As soon as they walked in, the two boys threw all the models into their small school bags, and then gave all the small school bags to Su Qianxi and ran toward the water excitedly. Li Jianyue couldn't catch up with the two brothers. Squatting behind, she pouted and shouted, "Mom, the brothers won't play with me." "Get up, Mom will play with you." Su Qianxi took Li Jianyue's hand and looked at the two children, excitedly wanting to get close to the water, but not daring to get close. She smiled and shouted, "Mosin, Daesu, take off your shoes first. Don't get them wet." "Okay." Li Mosin listened, took off his shoes, and put them aside neatly. Li Jianxian followed suit. He put his aqua blue shoes next to Li Mosin's yellow shoes and ran barefoot toward the water. The sea rose and fell. Li Jianxian and Li Mosin laughed and ran after the sea. But as soon as the sea rose, they immediately screamed and ran to the side. When Li Jianyue saw that, she was also eager to try. She broke free from Su Qianxi's hand and ran over there. She took off the pink shoes on her feet and ran after her brother, shouting, "Brother!" Li Jianxian played by himself and ignored her. Li Jianyue pouted her lips and started running as well. Chased by the seawater, she ran at the same time as her brothers, but she ran slower than them. Her little feet were wet in an instant. Li Jianxian laughed unceremoniously. "Ursu, you idiot, you're too slow." Li Jianyue was unhappy. She ran towards Li Mosin and shouted, "Brother Mosin, take me out and play with me. I'm going to ignore Big Brother." Li Mosin ran towards Li Jianyue with a smile, took her hand, and shouted, "I don't play with Daesu." The two little guys held hands and ran up and down the beach, chasing the waves, screaming and running away. Li Jianxian was unhappy. He ran over and took Li Jianyue's other hand and said, "The three of us will run faster." Chapter 672. Seeing that the children did not look back, she put her hand on his and said, "The year before last." She paused and looked up at his face. "You don't like him?" Mosin is actually a good kid, not like Tang Minjing at all. Neither her appearance nor her temperament was like Tang Minjing. Children needed to be taught. Heredity was not a big factor. Su Qianxi always believed that people were born kind. It turned out that Su Qianxi had taught Li Mosin well. When he was first picked up from the orphanage, he was very shy and introverted. He didn't dare to go out to play and always stayed alone. At that time, the two little guys, Daesu and Ursu, were just learning how to speak and calling him brother. Playing with the two little guys, Li Mosin became more and more cheerful. His temper became more and more lively, and he was also very smart. Holding her in his arms, he chuckled. "This child is really good. She is well-behaved and sensible. It's all thanks to your good teaching. Tang Minjing is hateful, but the child is innocent." Su Qianxi looked at him. "When the director of the orphanage called me, I was working overtime in the company. At that time, Mosin had a fever for several days. The director took him to the doctor, and the doctor said it was the flu. At that time, the orphanage was short of funds, and Many children were infected, but Mosin was the most serious. The director hoped that I could help those children. After Mosin recovered from his illness, he became a little dependent on me, so I simply adopted him and registered him under our household register. Reaching out to touch his hand, she looked up at him and said, "I knew you would come back. When I proposed to adopt him, you did not agree. I was afraid that you could not accept it, so I asked him to call me Annie instead of Mom." Hearing that, Li Siqing deliberately kept a straight face and said, "Silly girl, this is called acting first and reporting later. At that time, there was nowhere to play, and you didn't come back. This child was too pitiful. At that time, apart from me, he didn't listen to anyone. He didn't want to eat, and he didn't want to play with other children, so it's okay. Teach him well. Don't let him grow up to be an ingrate." Li Siqing let go of her and whispered, "I'm going to prepare something. There's a barbecue grill over there. You can bring the child to barbecue later." "All right, go ahead." Reluctantly, he kissed her neck and walked toward the barbecue grill. Su Qianxi looked around and blushed. Then she took off her shoes and walked toward the children. Li Mosin brought Li Jianyue there to pile up the sand. Li Jianyue used the stick left after eating the lollipop to poke at the sand. After digging up the sand, Li Mosin patted the sand, while Li Jianxian picked up shells at the side and kept putting them into Li Jianyue's pile of sand. "Ah, crab!" Li Jianxian shouted, holding a small thing the size of a finger in his hand. He shouted excitedly, "Mosin, Ursa, look, there are crabs. Alive!" After saying that, he ran over barefoot and threw the live crab into the middle of the pile of shells. Li Mosin watched from the side. He reached out to pinch the little thing and brought it to Li Jianyue. "You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.